Everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. I call to order this work session of the Hillsboro School District Board of Directors. Before we begin, we would like to provide some important information about interpretation services. Please remember to speak clearly and directly into the microphones at a moderate pace. Please do not speak over one another so that you accurately convey your message. Thank you for your cooperation. Our first agenda item is support and response to challenging students' behavior with Brooke, Jenny, and Chelsea.
Yes, and Fran as well. So tonight, per our school board summer retreat, there was a question about what we are doing to keep both of our staff and our students safe during challenging behavior when it arises within our schools. So tonight we have Jenny and Chelsea who have been leading that work, as well as Fran will be also sharing some information as well to provide a report on the year-long work they've been doing. About this time last year, they began a committee of work and started to review how we could best move forward into the 24-25 school year with some additional support. So they'll be sharing that. And with that, Chelsea and Jenny, I'm going to pass the clicker on to you, and away we go.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I'm Jenny here. I coordinate the mental and behavioral health for HSD. That's that you have that. I'm Chelsea Grant, one of our student services directors. Awesome. So, like Brooke said, in addition to and while our community feedback outlets were ongoing, we so in fall of 2023, we assembled an interdepartmental team from our Office of School Performance. This included representatives from student services, from our equity access and engagement team, mental health support team, and all the way to our human resources and federal programs. We wanted to make sure we were viewing this through as many lenses as possible. With this team in the fall of 2023, we reviewed some data within our district, some of the history, some of those community building, or the community and building feedback, and then we also explored some of the research that we had in our district already, and started to brainstorm around ways that we could leverage those in a more effective and efficient way to support us. In the spring of 2024, we assembled a small group of elementary school principals. They represented each of our leaders, and so our intention was to bring a building level voice to this conversation. It was really helpful feedback. We were able to gain some suggestions, some kind of boots on the ground input, and it was representative of the needs that our educators, our teachers, our classified staff, and our principals were feeling every day in our buildings. So through that feedback and through that information gathering, we were able to propose some next steps and action items that we're going to tell you about. This was really elementary centered. We are looking to begin this process for our secondary schools as well. The process looks a little bit different for our older students. So we're looking forward to having the same conversation with our secondary team. Some of the data that we reviewed in these teams is displayed on the screen. Our limited student support requests. We know that this is a system that's a little bit unique to Hillsboro. I'm sure it's one that many of you are familiar with, but in short, when a building is needing some additional staffing support, oftentimes short-term, sometimes longer-term, to alleviate needs of a severe safety risk, whether it be health, behavioral, or otherwise, there is a method for them to request some of that additional support. This does look like classified staff support, and it is built by we reviewed how many of those requests or how many students were represented in those requests. We also looked at room clears. So in these instances, for whether it be emotional or physical safety reason, an educator or staff member decided that it was in everybody's best interest to remove students from space to de-escalate a situation. So how many times was that? We also looked at our out-of-district programs. So this is Northwest Regional, Cascade, Pacific, Columbia, also like Works Northwest and Oak Grove Academy out in Forest Grove. So how many students are currently being served in those programs, and then how many students were on wait lists waiting for spots in those programs. As far as staffing, we looked at how many classified hires or how many classified staff had been brought on board since August. We also looked at special education assistant turnover. We know that that is a big concern, and building capacity within those within that population. Looked at how many SEAs have less than 2 years of experience. What does the experience look like within our classified staff? And then we examined mental health care coordination referrals and wellness center referrals.
It's really good that we're going to be talking about some of the things that we've kind of put in place as a result of these feedback sessions, but I also want to anchor to some of the existing supports, the things that we've always had in place to support behaviors. So who are those district level and building level folks that are really supporting when we have identified these needs and coordinating to make sure that students have what they need. So things like our TOSA support and our clinical psychologist team who come in and consult with teams when needs are acute and teams are sometimes stumped as to what to do next. We have also had an inclusion TOSA that's supporting some of this work. There's a lot of players here that work with the school teams to make sure that they feel prepared and supported in doing the work that they're doing. But most importantly, to celebrate the folks that are there in the schools that are identifying and monitoring and supporting those needs every day, like school counselors and case managers, classified staff, those folks. So those existing staff supports are a part of this equation still, even though we're going to talk about some of the new things. As well as existing systems. So what are our systems in schools to identify, monitor, and connect students to the available and relevant support within our school system, and then sometimes outside of our school system when those needs are evident. So things like the student support process, how we're monitoring students and resources through care and support teams, and tiered behavior response systems. And then Francesca's going to talk about our harassment and bullying.
We also have a system set up with our harassment, bullying, and bias incident responses. And when we don't find resolution in one of our universal or tiered supports that were mentioned previously, we have a structure that has been in place for quite some time to process these incidences. Individual attention is given by an administrator to each situation with the support from district personnel, and a continuous follow-up loop to support our students as well as, and families at times too, to work to find restoration, repair, and resolution for the situation.
So in addition to examining our current systems, we were able to make some additional staffing investments. The first one was, we're really lucky to be working with and contracting with Randy Cooper. She's a behavior specialist currently working with Northwest Regional. She's allocated for 0.6, so 3 days a week. Her primary role is to support teams, not only existing within special education, but also general education, and behavior systems at the building level, at the student level, as well as professional development, implementation, writing, some behavior plans, as well as we also added a student services TOSA. Our intention behind this role is to support professional development, again, not only for our special education staff, but also our general education staff. You know, their students are most successful when they work and support across those levels of support. She's also supporting with our legal compliance, supporting some of our legal cases and more challenging situations. So those are being she's also the engagement in our interdepartmental collaboration. We've added a school psychologist, increasing to 14 to serve our whole district. We've also added safety care trainers. We now have 7 serving the district. That was too soon, I forgot.
Oh, I didn't do it. Oh, did you do it?
I don't know. Did I do it? Anyway.
Sorry.
That's okay. And then for our elementary behavior specialists, we did reallocate their FTE so that they are supporting, most of them are supporting more than one building, so trying to stretch that capacity and professional expertise to as many of our students as possible. All right, the areas of training, one thing that came out of our license or classified, our building principal feedback sessions was abundantly clear we need more training for our SEAs, especially when it comes to onboarding. So we have many staff. We're very lucky to hire classified staff over the course of the year. We know that many of our classified staff some are coming in with some educational experience, some are not, right? And so our task was to figure out how to efficiently and effectively build capacity so that when they start on day one, they're able to not only feel secure and supported within their role, but then are able to best support their students. So next week is our first classified training, our SEA, Special Education Assistant onboarding. So in addition to some on-site support, which of course they will get, they're also going to attend a half-day training here at the ACE. This is facilitated by our Student Services TOSA and what's case role?
Mental health specialist.
Mental health specialist. Thank you. So some of the topics that will be covered in this training is kind of some SPED basics, familiarizing them to the processes and procedures, some of the terminology that they'll come across in supporting students in special education, as well as de-escalation strategies, supporting small groups and large groups, some of the more technical pieces of their role, as well as trauma-informed and culturally responsive practices. In addition to that 3-hour training or half-day training, an onboarding checklist has been developed and will be provided to buildings. So this is the intention is to help structure their onboarding practices in buildings as well. Not only how to read behavior plans and some more complex parts of their position, right down to how to use the right? How to use the software. Nuts and bolts that sometimes get lost in the mix, but also make a job it's much easier and smoother to do your job when you have that knowledge. In addition to the classified training, we've also added or invested in some safety care training. It's an advanced training that allows for our staff to use blocking pads when we're in a situation that is crisis. By using this technique and these better able to keep students and staff at the moment. And also allows for more individualized planning and training in crisis situations.
Along with some of the staffing investments, we've been able to expand our training team for collaborative problem solving. This is an evidence-based trauma responsive model to help teams approach how they're going to respond and teach the skills necessary when behavior challenges are coming up with students. And CPS sort of follows the philosophy that kids do well if they can, and we want to get to the underlying reasons that these situations are arising so that we can get in there and solve those problems. So being able to expand that training team means we've been able to offer more training, in various versions, all the way from little intro trainings to help bring teams up to speed on what it is, all the way to the level 2 or level 1 2-day training for teams. One of the things we like about the CPS model is it's really aligned with our transformative cell work and our restorative practices work that we've already been emphasizing along the way. And so being able to expand that training allows us to kind of approach some of the behavior support with teams from that lens, and also kind of update the tools and resources that we're making available to teams that are all kind of anchored to that same philosophy.
And then the expanding of our restorative practices. Restorative practices is something that we have done in Hillsboro for quite some time. About 3 years ago, we did a reboot to pull us all together. We've had changes in staffing as well as administration and those who have been trained in the past. So 3 years ago, we started off really recalibrating ourselves on what restorative practices means for us in HSD. And it aligns very closely to what Jenny was saying with collaborative problem solving. Collaborative problem solving gives you those skills and those tools in your toolkit to have the conversation. When I think about restorative practices, it also has tools but gives you a bigger umbrella of creating that inclusive and maintaining a community that is strong, built on relationships. And it reminds me of what Nancy was saying earlier about the relationships. The key to this is having those relationships so that when harm occurs, you can repair it. You can't repair something that doesn't need repair, that you can't return to if there was a relationship there. So it really hits home with that. We have a team that have been trained, individuals that have gone through the key training through some of our companies that we are working closely with. We are right now working in high school, and we have a restorative practices leadership team, as well as a restorative practice book study that's coming up to further that capacity, and also building it into our monthly climate culture and voice meetings. The expanded training and ongoing coaching and support helps our schools to utilize the skills that they are obtaining in collaborative problem solving, the skills that they have learned in trauma-informed practices, using transformational skills, but are able to see it in a way where we can restore, repair, and move on, where our kids are learning as we're doing this. It aligns closely with all of our district's emphasis on transformational self, as well as a vehicle to collaborative problem solving.
Something else the teams asked for during this process is some alignment. You know, it'd be just good to know what strategies we're all using and what tools we're using and things like that. And so a team of folks got together and really tried to bring some of those resources together on a landing page. Updated behavior response framework was put together with associated tools, so that we can provide teams the scaffolding to kind of look at, okay, when we're starting to see those struggles, what are our resources, what are our procedures, what building structures are going to support us collaborating to make plans for these needs. So that's been made available. It helps with facilitating earlier intervention, data monitoring tools, things like that, that really help us to plan and be thoughtful about our approach to supporting behavior. The student supports that we were able to get in place, we had some additional investments for out-of-district placements. We've expanded over the last several years school-based mental health programming, where we bring resources on site, like therapeutic support on site for students that are in need of that level of support. Things like walkie-talkies that help teams to coordinate when there is a crisis, so that everybody's communicating and getting the resources brought into the situation that are needed to navigate those situations. And then
so we're also engaging in a pilot with Northwest Regional. It's the practical functional assessment and skills-based training pilot. Right now we have 6 students and school teams. They're dyads, so it's 1 student and 2 building staff. It's a train-the-trainer model, and what PFA-SBT is it's a behavior intervention that's used to address some really severe problem behavior that is themselves into others, right? So this might be elopement, physical aggression, self-injurious behavior, sometimes it's pica. So those really extreme behaviors that we want to reduce as quickly as possible, right? And so it includes a practical functional assessment, and this is a quick analysis that's going to help to identify that precursor behavior, and then to help us determine a stepped out kind of task analysis that's going to respond to a lower intensity behavior and provide intervention in a really intentional, discrete, skills-based way. The students that we've included in this pilot are those that are waiting on an out-of-district wait list, right? So we know that those resources are very slim. We don't know when those spots are going to open up. And so we've pivoted to build capacity with our staff who are already supporting them in a more intentional again, this is a train-the-trainer model, so through this pilot, our hope is to build capacity within this small group to then continue to train and build capacity in years going forward.
So where do we go from here? We're expanding this conversation into our secondary, making plans for that now. We're going to continue to monitor the data, track the impact of some of these investments. And really, it's important. I know we've talked a lot about funding recently, but the advocacy for continued funding to be able to sustain and expand the supports that are necessary in this area is going to be really, really important. A lot of our money came from temporary funding, and you learn to really rely on some of these resources. So that advocacy is going to be really great. And I think that the messaging out there that's important for all of us to kind of embrace is, yes, the needs are intense and they're different than they used to be, and that's not made up. That landscape is a reality, and we are really working to evolve as a system to build the capacity of our staff that are taking this on every day. I really celebrate the work that's been going on in schools, and people
you know, kind of rising to the occasion to learn and grow with the growing needs of our students. So we really, you know, look to that continued support and funding to be able to continue to do this work and enhance what we're able to offer teams and students and families. Are there questions? Yeah, go ahead. You do it, probably. No? Go ahead.
I did have a question. Have SEAs that have been previously hired, have they been retroactively offered performance training for if they are not comfortable or confident in their skill set?
That's a great question. Yeah, yes. So we have an ongoing, admittedly targeted towards our elementary teams, an ongoing monthly SEA training that happens after school. Employees are paid for it. Compensated is the word I was looking for that time. And we really do, we try to elicit as much feedback as possible, so we're making that training relevant. We've also partnered, whether it's through our specialists, other teachers on special assignment that are supporting buildings. If there's a building need or a skill that we need that we don't have, we've been able to provide training in that capacity. Oh, that's true, yes. It's been at regular intervals.
The classified summit, I'm just thinking on an annual basis, we've been able to provide it's like a half-day classified summit where they come and rotate into different content areas that they selected. And we always have something on de-escalation, trauma-informed care, suicide prevention, things like that they can tap into it, usually in the winter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we've had discussions with our buildings about the classified onboarding that we created. Again, this is our first try, so we're gonna see how it goes and pivot as we need to. But if there's a need that a building has and they want to use some of that training for their current staff, we could certainly.
Thank you.
Sorry, I don't know who to go to next. Sorry.
Oh, Erica.
I have a question about like the onboarding for you said that in the beginning is a half-day retreat when they first start, later.
Yeah, so it's we have once a month, and so we know that staff are hired not at a consistent rate, and so we do have one scheduled monthly. So our goal is to capture whoever's been hired within that month. So for some it might be really soon after hire, for some it might be a month in, but we wanted to make sure it was a regular interval as well to capture as many.
Gotcha. And is there anything later throughout the year, halfway through, to check to see like how's it going and if they need to retake some of that training, or like?
I don't think we've established that system, but I think it's absolutely something we would monitor this year. And the onboarding is new, so we're working really closely with our facilitators on that training. So as we go through it, so those that are participating in the training, but also the buildings that are receiving people, if there's feedback that we need a part 2 later in the year.
So I was also wondering if have been any thoughts or ideas of having, like, I think we do it for like the license, there's like learning communities. Is that something that might be possible for SEAs?
Yeah, I think it could be possible, and we try to use those monthly trainings as a vehicle for that.
Just for like sharing best practices, or like
right. Yeah.
Support for families. So I'm sure the kiddos that are experiencing some behavioral, it's not just happening at school, but how is our relationship with the family so that they have the same like resources or understand, if this is how we're handling it at school, maybe do the same at home so that, they have the same environment? Or is there any partnerships with other organizations that support families?
Absolutely.
Evenings, I think, is a great example.
Yeah, well, and in response to, if we're seeing problem behavior at school, we want to engage the families as soon as possible, right? So we want that to be as collaborative as it possibly can. Really, if they're working with an outside provider, we always seek to open up that communication pathway as well. And student services, kind of on a more global level, we do have regular family engagement evenings that we offer to our families who have students IEPs. We've had our clinical psychologists Austin present, we've had PACT Oregon present, and so we also try to offer those regular touch points for families in that modality as well.
Best practice always with behavior challenges would be that we're engaging the family in those conversations as early as possible. You'll see that reflected in the framework. It's crucial. That's the hope. So most of those folks that are out there supporting and training and coaching teams with this are going to be asking that right out the gate. What does the family say about this? What has their input been? And I think that it's really important to align and bridge, and it's one of the only paths forward if you ask me.
I also think the call to action around, and really this also came from a lot of the coffee chats from our superintendent, from our listening sessions, from what we heard even downstairs in our boardroom when our families and community members come to speak. I think the call to action is going to be an ongoing call to action for some time, and Jenny spoke about the advocacy at the state. That is, I think, key to activating a lot of the additional ideas, plans that the team has ready to activate if and when we get more funding to support that. So some of that PLC work, some of the coaching efforts, I really appreciate the comprehensive plans they've put together, and I think through the advocacy of more funding at our state level, we can do more, and they're ready to activate more of the plan. So this is a small component of what we were able to do this year, but could definitely activate more of that plan with the hopes of more funding.
But just to further on your question, Erica, I think we have, which makes us very unique in Hillsboro, is we already have set parent advisory and family advisory committees. So I can't think of any time in the last 4 years where we haven't had student services come in those targeted times and speak to our families on different things and strategies they can do to help their students. Because not all students who have extreme or large behaviors are on a 504 or an IEP. Some of them may come in with no identifying, and parents are really just struggling. So another way that we're able to meet our families is by going to our targeted focal group advisory committees that are already established and be able to bring those suggestions and ideas to them. And I think that is one really beautiful thing about Hillsboro, is that we have those connections with our families, that we have not only your student engagement, student services family engagement team, we also have already established teams and committees that we can plug ourselves into, and I don't know of any time when we haven't had you come into any of those groups and present. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So I had a couple of questions. First, thank you for the presentation. It's nice to know just how comprehensive support for our students and for our staff. The first question I had was around how we're monitoring and evaluating some of these trainings. Are we looking to see, will it correlate with a decline in the number of room clears that we have to do, or will it be more subjective, like teachers and staff feel more comfortable and confident and ready to engage in kind of a high escalation kind of scenario? So how, first question is, how are we, or how will we monitor and evaluate the effectiveness of some of these trainings and some of these strategies? And then I have a couple of questions, but I'll pause it.
Well, the data that we're monitoring, we'll continue to be looking into that. The LSS referrals, the room clears, those are good gauges for the acuity in the building, right? If a team feels more effective in managing the needs that are emerging in their building, you're going to see less calls for help, right? And so ideally, that's what we're seeing on the more short-term side of things, is that people are feeling more equipped to handle those situations effectively on their own at the building level. We also monitor, and the reason that was shared was mental health care coordination referrals, wellness center visits. The connection to the relevant resources is a huge marker. I don't always want to see those numbers going down. Sometimes it's meaningful to see them going up, because that means they're getting connected to the relevant support that they've displayed the need for. And so I'm not always seeing that as a bad thing, but they're continuing to be part of the narrative. These are the needs, and this is how we're meeting them, basically. And I think that the self-evaluation of staff is really meaningful. What do I need to feel successful with this work? and things like the classified staff being able to provide an exit ticket and let us know what more they need from us. They do an exit ticket every year from that classified summit, and we use that feedback to plan the next one. And so we try to really be on top of what the staff are saying about what their needs are in these areas too, and really plan accordingly.
Thank you. For the wellness center referrals, I think the number was like over 2,000. Are the wellness centers in some of our schools able to keep up with that number of referrals? Because that seems really, really high. But are wellness centers able to keep up with that? Or is it, I don't know all the things that we provide in the wellness center. So maybe having a better understanding of what actually a student who's referred to the wellness center will go through would be helpful. Yeah. But yeah, are we able to keep up with that high?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a little bit of a balance, right? The needs are often feel more extreme and than what we have available to meet them. But we work with the schedules to make sure that they're manageable schedules. Sometimes it's 30 students that we see for 15 minutes at a time, small groups. So that number is reflective of students that have been in a small group in the wellness center or served individually in the wellness center. So they do have a pretty robust capacity to get students cycling through, and multiple students at a time in many of our wellness centers. But they go for that targeted support. They go because they've struggled with self-management or social awareness or other social and emotional skills in the classroom, and then they go for some more of that support. What are the tools that can help me build those skills? And then they get that extra practice as well in the wellness center.
So just because a student would get a referral doesn't mean that they would actually take that or go to the wellness center.
That's reflective of the students who were served in the wellness center. Yeah, that number.
And then last question. How many of, let's say, I'll just isolate one of the data points that you shared around room clears. How many are from the same student? Are you guys looking at kind of disaggregating the data to see how many of our repeats of the same students, or versus just, are you looking at the whole number?
It's a good question. Yeah, it's a really good question.
I don't have it readily available, but we do examine that, and there are instances where there are a number of room clears for one student or one classroom, and both of those data points are two different ones, and they give us different information. So we do examine,
and I would imagine the level of intervention or the care that. Oh, thank you.
When you say 200 room clears on that slide, is that the same classroom? If they have one room clear over the course of the year, is that classroom included? Or if they have one in March and one in November, or November and then March, are those separate in the 200 number?
Those would be separate. Yeah. So the 200 was reflected of the instances of room clear? Yeah. So it may be at the same classroom.
I learned a lot from your presentation, thank you, and also learned a lot from Sheen's questions. I appreciated those as well. I think that sometimes one of the small challenges I have as a board member is bridging sort of the high-level information we get in board meetings with constituents who say, well, this is, what we're experiencing in our school. And sometimes to the extent I say, well, I know there's some suggested messaging for the community, and sometimes I think if I respond in those terms, it can feel a little bit too generic or vague for them. So I think this was great information, and going forward, as you collect more data, I think it might also be helpful to for board members to have maybe concrete examples so we see in our mind, like, before we had this training, this is how this might have been experienced in the classrooms, but with this program, with this additional support, here's the changes we're seeing in the classroom. So then we can, I think I can better explain to members of the community who ask me, well, these are as a result of these measures, here's what our professional experts are saying they're actually seeing as differences in the classroom. So going forward, additional information on that too.
Qualitative data points next time. You got it.
You mentioned out-of-district placements. Is that primarily Northwest Regional ESD or?
Primarily, yeah.
But you also mentioned a wait list. Are the resources where are we? I know it's one of the most expensive. Is it budgetary? We don't have the money to do. What are the reasons why people be on a wait list?
Yeah, it might be budgetary, but also capacity. So, for example, in a grade 4 to 6 classroom at Northwest Regional, maybe it's 3 to 5. Anyways, they might have 10 spots for students, and they serve not only Hillsboro but also Beaverton and some outlying districts. So we're all kind of vying for those spots. So there might be situations where, from a financial standpoint, we could buy it, but the availability and capacity in the classroom isn't there. So both are kind of in play.
So primarily, it's scarce, lack of resources.
Yeah, we could have a pretty long and robust conversation about kind of the population that is most underserved, or the programs that we have the highest need for, the wait lists that are the longest. We definitely see some.
I would add too that when we talk about reimbursement for high-cost disability, that it has a direct correlation to the availability of slots. The economy around this is restricted based on the amount of resources that we have and that providers have to open spots for our students to get the therapeutic environment, for example, that they need.
I just want to say thank you again for the presentation, and I know, Brooke, you mentioned it, but I think that point of advocacy, I'm thinking about our recipe card, and connecting, because I know that's what legislators also hear about, is behavior issues. So how can I connect? What does it cost for you to fully fund us so that we can, what would we do with that when it comes to behavior issues? For us to have something I would like a little spiel about that would be helpful. But I was just looking at your data guidance, thinking about how many SEAs would mean that we are fully supported? How many positions? What does that translate for me when I'm trying to advocate for more funds?
Definitely, I think, put together from the list that we have and how much that could potentially cost, and then ask. Yep. Yeah.
Training and all of that. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Great.
Thank you very much. This is as disheartening as it is encouraging. The disheartening part is that our legislators haven't put their money where their mouth is and where their heart is. And they will publicly go out and talk about these things that they're important, but they're not funding us to do more. It's encouraging that despite being underfunded, despite them being under-resourced, to a certain degree, you're still getting work done. And so I really do mean sincere thank you. I listened to my sister's story as a teacher, and so I'm presuming that your stories are similar. Having 30 kids in the classroom, having 6 in the classroom, teaching 5, 10 different IEPs and all of that. So I don't want you to walk away from this body and us thinking that we don't understand. We do. So thank you.
Thank you. Our final agenda item is a session in statewide assessment update with Audria.
Hello, everybody. The annual statewide assessment update. I did share in a board update with you all the information that came out of ODE, but this kind of just takes all of that. Very robust pack. You clicked on the link, it was a lot of information, so this kind of synthesizes all of that information for you. So I'm going to go ahead and click forward. Just as we go into looking at this data, a reminder that statewide assessment is just one of several measures of school performance and progress. And the results are showing that Oregon is stabilizing, but I just want to remind you, this is not the only thing that we use to look at our students. We have had Gina here talking about the multitude of assessments that we use for our elementary students. We have data that we monitor with our students in on-track work at the high school level. We monitor progress and grades at the middle school level. We have other assessments that we utilize. So again, it's one little piece of the pie that tells the story of our students. And again, it just kind of helps give information. It's a measure overall, especially for our students that have been historically underserved in the system. And again, I just kind of stress it's an important part of the picture, but it's an incomplete part of the picture. Overall, the state has small increases in math and science and slight decreases in literacy, and we are mirroring that with our data as well. A couple of things also to know. Oregon participation rates are up just a tiny bit overall as well, but at high school, they are still too low to support most comparisons. They are still under the 80% threshold. So that does make it a challenge to compare across districts and to compare across schools and across time, to be perfectly honest. 2023-24 is the first reporting year for the new definition of students experiencing poverty. That group is shifting as we are moving into CEP districts and opportunities where schools are like school-wide CEP. It's changing how they're needing to look at that data point, because you can't have a comparison of an entire district if you're on a CEP component. So they are using some information, so that has adjusted that grouping. So prior year comparison is really not an adequate comparison, just so you all know. And again, I think this is where we talk about advocacy, continued support in educational programming with mental health, our learning with summer school, after-school programming, our early literacy grant, high school success, all of those things, just continuing to advocate for those pieces, because that is what will help us continue to grow in areas. I always like to have this data here, just because we kind of try to forget COVID, but it did happen, and it's impactful on our students, and even though we are away from it, it is still going to be an impact whether we want to acknowledge that or not. I want to acknowledge this challenge. So for the 23-24 school year, these are the grade levels that took assessments that year. This is what they're experiencing, their experience was in school during that, prior to that, if that makes sense for everybody. So again, I would say March of 2020 was very impactful. Comprehensive district learning, very impactful. And while return to school was wonderful, that year was a very challenging year as we returned with a lot of restrictions, a lot of angst, and a lot of things happening. So I think those 3 years are pretty impactful on a student's experience in our system. I would say this year has felt the most like a typical school year that we have had since the pandemic. So this year felt very positive. The roll into this year felt very much like a regular school year. So I really do feel like we are getting back to those, but we are still experiencing challenges, that you just even heard about in terms of student behavior that are still existing. But again, that gives you kind of an overall picture of where the kiddos were during that year, those years. These are our participation rates for HSD. Overall, again, most of our participation rates are up from previous years. Only exception to this data is fourth grade had a small dip. We were around 95% in ELA and a little closer to 96% in math, and for that just had a tiny dip. And then 11th grade, while we did increase, that's that note where we are still below the 80% mark in all three areas. Only because somebody may ask, and I'll just front load the information. Our area of opt-outs also continues to occur. In the 23-24 school year, we had about 1,200 opt-outs. That is a tiny bit down compared to the 22-23 school year, where we were over 1,400 opt-outs. Each of those are individual opt-outs. Our area where we have the most opt-outs is math, particularly at the 8th and 11th grade levels. Next comes ELA, and then science. We have about 250 opt-outs overall, but just a reminder, we also have less grades that are testing in science. Here's our overall student achievement data for ELA, math, and science at the grade. So this is all students clustered together. Again, 11th grade, the asterisk is there because of our participation rate. It's an overall look. It does not, again, take into account for the individual students, all of the students in this classroom. This is our ELA scores. Kind of like what we talked about with the strategic plan, you have an apples to oranges comparison. When you look at third grade, it's a different group of students every year. So when you're going across, I always like to, I do have a little red. So when you're going across, if you look at third grade, this 36.2, 35.7, and now 37.2, these are different groups of students every time. It's a whole new group of third graders. And when we shared at our last time with the literacy information from Gina, we also talk about cohorts, which, oops, I'm totally shining it right in Mark's eye. Sorry about that. Try not to be flying Mark tonight. I think it's important to see, while it's not a perfect cohort, it is a group of students. So if you want to look at the third graders from 21-22, as they move through our system, they are increasing overall, even though here we aren't seeing as much growth as we would like to see across, if that makes sense. That's a different group of students. Again, we are seeing improvement in elementary, which makes sense for us because that has been a strong focus area for us around literacy, improving our literacy block and all of those components. I think what we are continuing to see is some challenges at the secondary level in terms of a buy-in for our statewide assessment when they really feel more connected to what their teachers are instructing in terms of content in those areas. I think that we are proud of the cohort kind of trajectory that's occurring. And we're also, I am super proud of this 37.2. While it's, again, not where we want to be, we're seeing an increase in the work, which means our foundational work at K-1-2 is starting to also pay off in that work. The same occurs for math. This is the across. And this data at elementary school, in particular, we are seeing, again, different group of third graders each year, but we are seeing an increase for our math data. I think what this is telling us is students are back in school, so they're getting math experience. The challenges that we're seeing here is our cohort data going on the diagonal is not increasing at the same rate. And to be honest, we have been very focused on literacy and increasing that. And we know we need to, and this year our strategic plan, we are shifting a little bit more of our focus into math and the work that we need to do around math to make sure that we are filling in those holes. We are seeing some increases in the middle school level overall, going across as well. We are seeing some places where we're intervening to support that work. At the 11th grade level, still, I think that number is not really something we can use as a touchstone for the data at 11th grade, just because our numbers are 80%. And this next slide here takes a look at our focal or different ODE groups by achievement. These are the ODE group titles that are shared. These are some key ones that we have just pulled out to keep an eye on. And again, for this data, it's not an all-encompassing list of all of the groups. What we have seen across at the state level, we saw math is kind of a mixed result at the state level as well as for us. We saw some increases in math for Black, African American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, and students with disabilities. And in ELA, our district saw some increases with American, Alaska Native, Black, African American, Hispanic, Latino, and students with disabilities categories as well. The state was a little bit more mixed in that information. As a reminder, this is same thing as an apples to oranges comparison, so it's a whole new group of students each time when we analyze this data. Looking ahead, this does confirm our focus areas for this year, especially at the elementary level, as we start to look a little bit more closely at math and writing. We also think is a component that needs to continue. And again, continued support for our identified focal groups that we have talked about before through the strategic plan. We're working through some really specific structured language scaffolds. Last year we had language scaffolds overall as our focus area, and this year just getting a little bit more specific in how those actually need to look and play out in the classroom, so much more structured. Our early literacy grant continuing to support on focusing especially at the K-5 level, and using our T-cell or transformative social and emotional learning framework to support students just in terms of feeling that sense, that belonging in school. So. A lot of information, and I know we're trying to be done by 7, and so I spoke fast, but I think we have some time if there's any questions.
I have a few questions, but I'm trying to prioritize here. So first of all, let me ask, so our third grade reading target is 70%, and we're getting pretty close to that. Our third grade English language performance on these exams is about 35%. So are the grade level reading standards and the grade level language arts standards so radically different that a third of our students are meeting one but not the other?
I think what's hard is our assessment that we utilize for our strategic plan is very focused on reading, like skill of reading. Our ESPA assessment does bring in other avenues of listening and writing that we are also needing to focus on. And I also think our students perform in a assessment that we give as the teachers. So the assessments that Dina talks about are more personalized assessments that occur in the classroom. ESPA is not providing that personalized data where we're interacting with students and getting kind of down to what their instructional level is for literacy. So I think it's hard to take this and say that they match perfectly, if that makes sense. Because there's different things that they're looking at, and I think the atmosphere in which they're being tested for the things that we look at within the class within Wonders are different than how they feel when they're assessing through ESPA. I don't know if they always...
It's counterintuitive that they're so radically different given the skill set is somewhat similar. There's some overlap, but I understand what you're saying, yeah. I guess I think I've said this before, so I won't belabor the point, but when we talk about like a standard, a grade level standard, I think in a lot of people's minds who don't work in education, they think of the third grade standard as naturally what third graders are doing. But so it always is interesting that because we know that it's actually what we as professional educators and community members believe third graders should do, it always is a little bit interesting to me that we define the standard such that a third of students are meeting it, and that has been the case for third grade, and in some of these even lower than third. I wonder if it creates a curiosity, I think maybe within some community members too, why we don't define the standards so that they are stretched, but that getting closer to 100% achievement is possible. Is it concerning that we define the standards in such a way that we're so far away from 100% that it doesn't feel like it's realistic within our lifetimes to get to 100%? Is that a good way of defining the standards, I guess?
You're opening up like a very large education project that probably needs to, because I would also say, I think at times these assessments are not written, statewide assessments are not written in a way that are equitably minded for all of the students that we serve, and a norm standardized test does not necessarily show what all kids know too. And so I think that's where it can be challenging. And again, that's why I really always want to stress this is one piece of the pie of what tells a story about a student. And it allows us to look at some overall trends. It does confirm what we're working on. And I think the writing piece and the math piece are two areas that I really do see us needing to do some improvements on. But I think it has to be all encompassing to really determine what students need individually in our system. And I think this doesn't tell you what a student, this will not tell you, I'll just use my own daughter, this does not say that, this doesn't tell me what Emerson needs. I think it tells me where she is within her peer group, potentially where she's at, but it doesn't tell me everything about her. It tells me one little sliver about her. And I think it's really important for us to look at other data sets to see if they are meeting standards. If I look at her writing as a teacher in her classroom, does it show that she can do what we are expecting from the Oregon standards in what she's producing in class, yes or no? If she didn't produce it on ESPA, that doesn't mean she's not capable of doing those things. Right. So, I know it's a hard, I know you and I have talked about this before with statewide assessment, and it's a challenge, and I think we just have to remember it's just one portion of our data, and that really what we're doing and what our teachers are doing and our educators are doing in the classroom in terms of formatively assessing kids daily, checking in and assessing them with one-on-one assessments that really give us a true picture of where their instructional level is versus their stretch level. And ESPA is just a hard, it came out of an era of No Child Left Behind, and I think there were really great things about that, and I think there were things that we were not thought of in an individual whole child process.
Here, is ESPA an English only test?
You can, for the reading components, yes, but for the math components, you can see it in a side-by-side Spanish-English, or a couple of other languages as well. We can set.
For reading, it's only in English.
HSD, for our strategic plan, we've chosen a bilingual assessment for third grade literacy, just so that we can show, like, if 42% of our students identify as Latino and 38% as white, and then we're very multiracial, multilinguistic, that's a better assessment of our literacy picture in HSD than our English-only standardized test.
Wondering, for what reason is 9th, 10th, and 11th grade not tested in a standardized manner?
I think when this came about, they wanted to utilize one grade level, and 11th grade ended up being the choice because they wanted to check on standards, like, so for example, like math, you would want to complete at least algebra and geometry, and 11th grade seemed to be where you were, and then heading into your third year of math. So they were looking for a grade level where you would have kind of the same basic core classes in 9th and 10th grade for the most part, and then being assessed in 11th grade. The pro is you've gotten those classes. I think the challenges, and we can talk about high school challenges, at the 11th grade level, there's a lot that happens in terms of testing for students at that grade level. I mean, they are taking AP tests, they are taking IB tests if they're at LLI, they are taking PACTs, they're taking PSATs, they're taking our Oregon Healthy Teen Survey, they are taking the state SEED survey, they're taking our belonging survey. So there's a lot that happens at the 11th grade level. So while maybe that might have been a great grade level to do it in terms of what would happen in 9th and 10th grade, I think it's a year where you are tested quite a bit for various things at that level.
About how the math sections were, you could see side-by-side English and Spanish. How are those translated? Did they get, like, people in? Did they have it double-checked? What I'm asking is, have there been errors reported in it? Have there been issues, anything that could be leading to it not being completely fair?
I think when it first began and they began to do the translations, there were definite times in which we would provide input around what the translation looked like. And I think where a lot of places have gone is to use human, like you do an initial and then you start to look. And so I think anytime we see something, though, we always notify. We have an opportunity to share through our test coordinators to share that information. If, like, this question did not look right, this translation, we can always share that information. But, yeah.
Feels a little excusey, like, well, we're not meeting standards because they're not measuring standards correctly. Okay, I get it. And I'm guessing this is a conversation happening in boardrooms based on the state numbers everywhere in the state, and I do trust that we are using other metrics to get a better picture of the student. So I get all that, it just feels like it. We have science numbers from 2018. I don't see the others. So 18-19 is the last year untouched by pandemic. Is that about right? Yeah, isn't it? Because March.
Yeah, 18, 19. I'm sorry, I meant to pull that out because I think what's hard is trying to do a comparator
Yeah.
pre-pandemic.
My question is sort of like, are all of the numbers substantially higher
Pre-pandemic.
Pre-pandemic,
Yeah.
Statewide and.
Statewide and for us, yes.
Yeah, that's.
I think,
that was my guess.
yeah, originally we had showed the 18, 19, and I think what I would say is, I think this needs to be our new baseline that we work from. The 18, 19 was just so long ago and pre-pandemic that we're really trying to just like, what have we done so far these last 3 years as ESPA has come back?
Oh, yeah, and we didn't do it one or 2 years.
Yeah, there was kind of a year, there's 2 years in between that wasn't done either, so.
And I think I attended an OSBA. There is a substantial number of school districts who are simply saying, we're not going to do this anymore.
Yeah, while our participation is, you know, like I said, our opt-outs are about 1,400. There are places where districts that are smaller than us or about the same size that are getting significantly more in terms of.
Not just in terms of opt-out. Am I right to think that there are districts in the state that have, and their groups advocate and say, we are no longer doing this as a district?
No, there are no states that can't do that.
Okay.
But I think we have seen places where their participation rate is like 18%.
Oh, and the district doesn't like hound anybody, oh, try to get out. They just like,
yeah.
Maybe that was the advocacy, was like, hey, okay.
And I can just, the background for that I learned is that the reason we do the Smarter Balance Assessment, and many states do the PARC, was out of federal requirements. So when we do the waiver for Every Student Succeeds Act, we say what our standardized test is that will apply statewide. And so there are a growing number of districts, I would say, ours would be an example, that are starting to emphasize the assessment data we think is most important based on the engagement we've done with our community, with our teachers, through the SIA work. That's where I'm proud of the accountability document that we have related to our strategic plan, because we don't call out our Smarter Balanced Assessment scores, we call out our running records, literacy scores in math, or in English and Spanish. We're not alone in doing that. That's just what we choose to emphasize. It's not that we've completely told the state that we'll no longer participate in Smarter Balance. I think that would get I think what happens then is they withhold federal funds from us if we were to say not participate. But just like you said, Mark, that doesn't mean that everybody's going out there and forcing students to do it.
Or even advocating.
We actually have a pretty high participation rate.
Yeah.
Because we provide a safe context for them to do it.
Yeah, it looks like that. I know, deals for everybody. I think everyone. Great job. So free and reduced lunch isn't really like an easy metric to talk about, but I think it's still like a quantifiable number.
It's a quantifiable number, and we would have the comparator for next year with the new tool in which they're assessing how that is.
And Hillsboro has been for as long as I can remember, at least 40%, 45% or so of students qualifying for so Title I. The demographics, let's not pretend that the demographics of our district don't influence some of our outcomes. I think
that is correct.
I think those of us who've been on board for a while, we got used to our district outperforming our demographics. We got kind of used to that. And the pandemic may have reset some of those expectations.
And I think we've talked about before, the pandemic also impacted some of our historically undermined populations much more than other populations. And I think that's also our, I think one of the things that comes out later as well is also our statewide report cards when they're more specific. And I think that also looks at growth of students, this achievement of students. And I think I always like to remind us, while, you know, we aren't at 100% yet, we are making strides and making growth. And I think where our students come to us and where they leave from us, the growth is also something we have where those success stories lie, because we don't control birth to 5 as well. We do, I don't know where Olga is, but we've got some preschools and it's happening, but we don't always control birth to 5, and we don't, you know, we have 6 to 7 hours with these students, and we really do want to focus on their growth and that they're leaving us in a better spot here to hopefully close that gap.
Great, thank you. And just because, yeah, with our time, we have to be respectful of everybody who's waiting for us at our regular session downstairs, so we will recess to our board meeting downstairs.
We'll begin like we always do with the flag salute. The flag is to the right behind you. I pledge allegiance to the flag, to the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, I will be reading the Hillsboro School District Land Acknowledgement. As we gather here today, we would like to take a moment to acknowledge that our district service area is on the occupied traditional homelands of the Alphalete Indigenous people, lands we now call Washington County and the state of Oregon. We honor the Indigenous people whose traditional and ancestral homelands we stand on the Tualatin, Kalapuya, Willamette, Clackamas, Tumwater, Molalla, bands of the Chinook, and many other Indigenous nations of the Columbia River. In remembering these communities, we honor their legacy, their lives, and their ancestors. We also recognize the urban Indigenous, Native, First Peoples community living in the metro area, which includes over 400 tribal nations. The Hillsboro School District is committed to the recognition and education regarding tribal and local history and working with our local tribes in partnership. Before we begin, we would like to provide some important information about interpretation services. Please remember to speak clearly and directly into the microphones at a moderate pace. Please do not speak over one another so that interpreters can accurately convey your message. Thank you for your cooperation. Our next item is the Native American Heritage Month proclamation read by Director Erica Lopez.
Good evening, everyone. The Hillsboro School District knows that during National Native American Heritage Month, we celebrate the rich tapestry of Indigenous people and honor their sacrifices, which we recognize as intricately woven into the history of this community and country. The Hillsboro School District recognizes that Native Americans are descendants of the original Indigenous inhabitants of what is now the United States. The Hillsboro School District honors Native Americans who have enriched our heritage and continue to add to all aspects of our society through their generosity of culture and the continued practice of teaching economic, environmental, and cultural sustainability. The Hillsboro School District is committed to engaging in dialogues led by tribal communities around the opportunities and work in which they are currently engaged in the areas of self-determination, sovereignty, and culture preservation. The Board of Directors of the Hillsboro School District do hereby proclaim the month of November 2024 be Native American Heritage Month. We urge all community members to join us in recognizing Native American Heritage Month. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Lopez. Our next item is American Education Week proclamation read by Director Jean Kim.
The Hillsboro School District recognizes that public schools are the backbone of our society, providing young people with the tools they need to maintain our nation's values of freedom, civility, and equality. The Hillsboro School District knows that by equipping young Americans with both practical skills and broader intellectual abilities, schools give them hope for and access to a productive future. The Hillsboro School District recognizes that education employees, licensed, classified, and technical support staff, and administrators work tirelessly to serve our children and communities with care and professionalism, many of whom are here in this room today. The Hillsboro School District encourages all community members to extend their commitment to public education and to the future of our children by supporting our community's schools through the contribution of time and energy. The Board of Directors of the Hillsboro School District do hereby proclaim the week of November 18th through 22nd, 2024, the American Education Week. We urge all community members to join us in recognizing American Education Week. Thank you.
you, Director Kim. Our next item is National Education Support Professionals Day Proclamation, read by Director Monique Ford. And she's online.
Thank you and good evening. The Hillsboro School District recognizes that education support professionals are essential partners to the education process and work diligently to provide a safe and healthy learning environment for students. The Hillsboro School District appreciates that education support professionals labor tirelessly to serve our students with care and professionalism. The district honors the invaluable and often unsung behind-the-scenes work in the support of teachers in delivering instruction, developing their talents and dedication in service to our students. The Board of Directors of the Hillsboro School District do hereby proclaim Wednesday, November 20th, 2024, to be National Education Support Professionals Day. We urge all community members to join us in recognizing all education support professionals for their valued contributions to the Hillsboro School District. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Ward. Our next agenda item is the approval of the agenda. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I move that the Board of Directors approve the agenda as printed.
Second.
It has been moved by Director Thomas and seconded by Director Lopez to approve the agenda as printed. Is there any discussion or any objection? Motion carries. Our next agenda item is to approve the consented agenda. Would anyone like to make a motion regarding the consent agenda?
I move that the Board of Directors approve the agenda as the consent agenda as printed.
Second.
It has been moved by Director Lopez and seconded by Director Thomas to approve the consented agenda as printed. Is there any discussion? Objection? No? Motion carries. Our next agenda item is audience time. And then before we get that started, I'm going to go ahead and read a statement. The revised audience participation statement. As representatives of the community, members of the Board of Directors believe that listening to public input is essential to making wise decisions. So we thank you for taking the time to be here. We consider this your time to speak and our time to listen. So individual board members will not reply directly to your immediately following your comment. If a board member hears something that requires additional attention, they may request it to be added to a future meeting agenda, or the superintendent and his designee may reach out directly to connect with you. We are fortunate in the Hillsboro School District to have a collaborative community that can discuss points of disagreement in a respectful manner. With this in mind, rudeness, ridicule, obscene or profane language, impatience, lack of respect for others, and personal attacks are not acceptable. Comments aimed at the state and federally protected classes are prohibited. Audience demonstrates supporting or opposing a speaker or idea are not permitted. We welcome frank discussion to district operations and programs, but in public sessions, the board does not hear comments regarding any individual district staff member. Public participation in board meetings is governed by the policy BDDH, public comment at board meetings. There are structured channels of the board to review complaints involving staff members described in the board policy KL public complaints. As you start your remarks, please share your name and if speaking for an organization, the name of your organization. We allow up to 3 minutes for each public comment. Please feel free to follow up by email to the board or the superintendent. Beth?
Okay. We have 7 people who have signed up to speak tonight. First up is Una Maher. Following Una will be Janet Phillips, and then on deck is David Juster.
Good evening. My name is Una Maher. My personal information is on file with the district since I'm a district employee. Good evening, Chairperson Santoya, Superintendent Ryman, members of the school board, and our district leadership. I'm a teacher here at HSD, a member of HEA, and a parent of 2 HSD students, 1 recent graduate and 1 currently at Liberty. I want to begin by thanking the representatives from HEA and those from HSD for their dedicated time and efforts in bargaining conversations that have happening both last school year and this one. Your hard work for our students and teachers is greatly appreciated. It's long been said that a teacher's workplace is a student's learning space. As I review the 5 points on our bargaining platform, those are class size and caseload for student success, safe learning environment for students and staff, compensation that helps recruit and retain educators, appropriate planning time, and time to manage IEPs and 504s for student success. Let me briefly describe 3 of them. Class size and caseload. Smaller class sizes are essential for student success. Over my 20+ years of teaching, I have had a class as small as 14 kindergarten students and as large as 32 kinders and first graders together. With small class size, I was able to build relationships with my students, meet their needs, and watch them thrive. Overcrowded classrooms hinder teachers' ability to connect with students and meet their individual needs. Every student deserves access to high-quality education free from the challenges of overcrowding. A safe learning environment. A safe learning environment is fundamental to effective learning. We must ensure that all students and staff can thrive in a space that promotes well-being and security. I have heard stories and witnessed firsthand some serious safety concerns at all levels of education in our district. While teaching my kindergarten and first grade classes, I've needed as many as 3 or more room clears in one day. This means stopping learning, looking for a vacant space for my students to be, and trying to teach them, perhaps in the hallways or in the cafeteria, not knowing when we could get back to our classroom or what condition the space would be in when we got there. My son at Liberty High School will not, if at all possible, use the restrooms during the day at school. He waits until the students have left the building or until he gets home. Every student has a right to feel safe at school. Time management. Our special education colleagues need adequate time to manage IEPs and 504s effectively. This time is critical for supporting students with diverse needs and ensuring that all educators can collaborate effectively. When special ed teachers have the opportunity to engage deeply with these plans, they can ensure accommodations and modifications are implemented consistently. This leads to better outcomes for students. It allows for timely adjustments based on individual progress or challenges of that student. Doesn't every student at HSD deserve an appropriate class size, a safe learning environment,
Thank you.
and the right to have their needs met?
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you very much for listening to me this evening.
Next up is Janet, followed by David, and on deck is Zachary Clark.
Hi, my name is Janet Phillips. I am an elementary special education teacher, as well as a proud member of the Hillsboro Education Association and a parent of 2 students here in Hillsboro. My information is on file with HR. Thank you for giving me a chance to talk with you guys today. The bargaining platforms are caseload size and class size, safety, compensation, planning time, and time to manage IEPs and 504s. These are essential to student growth and learning. With a caseload of 39 students, sorry. With a caseload of 39 students and 1.6 licensed full-time employees, we are serving all of our students. However, this places significant strain on our planning, break, and lunch periods, and we are still unable to ensure the safety of all of our students and our staff. There are multiple students at our school. When they get dysregulated, they will run out of the building and into the neighborhood, which takes multiple staff members out of the building and away from their main jobs. I also work with some students who, when they get dysregulated, they get physical with both students and adults. While myself and a small handful of staff at our school are safety care trained, we are a very small proportion of our school, and we are not always available when behaviors occur. I have one student in particular who is only regulated when they are outside on the swings, even when it rains. I fear for everybody's safety when it gets cold and rainy, which is fastly approaching. I frequently express to staff that I feel very overwhelmed and like I'm on fire, constantly running between my groups, and I am not alone. We have numerous students with extensive needs, yet we lack adequate staffing to effectively address all of them, and my requests for additional support have been denied again and again. General education teachers are urgently seeking more training and resources to better assist students on IEPs, but we simply do not have the time within our current schedule to address these critical needs. The situation is becoming critical and is contributing to a rapid risk of burnout among staff when we need willing educators more than ever. Multiple staff members have expressed that they feel that they are unable to go on all year with current conditions. To recap, our bargaining platforms, our caseload and class sizes, safety, compensation, planning time, and time to manage IEPs and 504 plans. These are essential to our student growth and learning. Thank you all for taking the time today.
Next up is David, then Zachary. On deck is Holly Cooper.
Good evening, school board and district leadership. My name is David Juster, and I've been a high school language arts teacher the past 26 years, including the last 21 at Hillsboro High School. I'm a proud Hillsboro Education Association member, and I'd like to give some specifics as to why HSD should support our proposals around class size, safety, compensation, appropriate planning time, and time to manage IEPs and 504s. Over the last few years, I've seen a drastic increase in class size and overall student caseloads for many high school teachers. Below are the documented examples of some current teaching realities at Hill High. A social studies teacher working in a classroom originally designed for 25 to 30 students has multiple classes of 40 plus students, including one class with 51 students on the roster. In addition, this teacher has 246 total students on his caseload. A chemistry teacher, also in a smaller classroom, has 4 classes out of her 6 total classes that each have 40 to 49 students on the caseload. A dozen more core teachers have multiple classes of more than 40 students and overall caseloads of 220 to 245 students. An outstanding universally respected French teacher, Tammy Van Slyke, decided to last for May to retire several years earlier than she had originally planned. This decision was based on what she called, quote, the unsustainable and unrealistic workload expectations and increasingly difficult conditions that have become the reality of the past few years. This trend is concerning for several reasons. Classroom management and safety. From my own decades of experience, effectively monitoring a class of 35 plus students is challenging enough, but when an extremely large class of 35 to 50 students is put into a classroom, safety concerns increase due to cramped conditions and limited seating or setup options. Creating a positive behavioral and academic culture is always a priority for teachers. And this becomes next to impossible when class sizes swell to unreasonable numbers. Teaching and learning. Excellent, efficient classroom teaching is dependent upon teachers being able to frequently check in with all students, especially the students with the highest needs. In addition, they need to return in a timely fashion student classwork with feedback. With huge class sizes and student caseloads of 220 to 250, these essential teacher actions become an impossibility. Building student-teacher relationships is an absolute key to creating a positive academic climate and for encouraging and motivating students. All of this becomes extremely difficult in overcrowded classrooms. Sustainability and teacher burnout is another issue. As the teacher workload increases with higher numbers of student contact and monitoring and managing classes with excessive student numbers adds insurmountable stress to teachers, both new and experienced, data shows that teachers are leaving the profession in droves. When excellent and potentially excellent teachers leave the profession years and/or decades earlier than they should,
Thank
student
you.
learning suffers.
Time is up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next up is Zachary, then Holly. On deck is Darren Battaglia.
Good evening, Chair Pantoja, Vice Chair Watson, fellow board members, Superintendent Ryman, and administrative leaders. My name is Zachary Clark, a proud member of the HEA. I am the music teacher and band director at Lad Acres Elementary School. I am here in support of the incredible members of our union who continue to work tirelessly to collaborate with our school district to create the best possible educational, secure, and loving environment for our students, as well as the staff that fills each building. I have the wonderful opportunity each year to be able to teach every student in our school. I'd like to think that my job is the best one in the school because I get to know everyone in the school. I feel as though if you lined up every student of ours in our gym, I could get 100% name accuracy. Needless to say, I have a well-rounded perspective to see the state of our classrooms, along with an understanding of how much time and effort is put into creating a constructive classroom culture. Our bargaining platform is aimed at bolstering the sentiment that I just stated. We can create a major impact through a manageable class size and caseload, safer learning environments for students and staff, fair compensation for our work, more planning time, and improved SPED support. I will speak on a few of these points. One of the major components of our proposal centers around staff workload, especially in regards to class sizes and caseloads. I see every class in the school, and it is clearly apparent that the larger our classes get, the far less individualized support than our smaller classes get. From my experience, we have more students than instruments in the vast majority of our classes. I have had to attempt to make a mallet instrument unit work with 15 outdated mallet instruments and class sizes that make their way into their 30s. Just in case that isn't abundantly clear, it doesn't work well. Students are left feeling dissatisfied, and it certainly isn't inspiring students to pursue a career in music or music education. I certainly do not have enough planning time throughout my day to ensure that each class's plans are airtight before they step into my classroom and to have that problem solved. Having another licensed staff member in the room would help assist, and it would be instrumental to student academic success. When I am able to check in with each student and focus on the standard in a more direct way that applies instruction in a personalized fashion, those students excel far faster. That certainly isn't new information, yet we are still discussing the reality that educators just have to simply figure it out, as opposed to a world in which we have all the resources to manage the large class sizes and intense workloads given to us. All of that only covers the academic side of the issue. Behaviorally and socially, we have seen a rise in stress, anxiety, and other debilitating mental health concerns that result in a disruptive classroom environment for not just the students exhibiting the behavior, but the rest of their classmates. A very regular occurrence in my week-to-week is managing huge feelings of anger, sadness, dysregulation, attention-seeking behavior, and destruction of musical instruments, both major and minor. From my own personal experience, I have seen the overwhelming shift in our students' abilities to remain calm and collected in a classroom setting. We play instruments every single day. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Next up is Holly, then Darren, and our final speaker will be Katie Ryan.
Good evening. My name is Holly Cooper. I am a parent of 2 children at HSD, and I'm also a graduate from Hill High from 35 years ago. I was not anticipating you all coming or being here tonight, and I feel so much pain for you. My topic is much less important than what you all are presenting tonight, so I want to thank you for sharing it, because as a parent here, I've seen in the classroom some of what you were experiencing, but never to this extent, and it's just heartbreaking. Sorry. The point of what I was coming to talk about was more to do with the email that I sent you all earlier this week related to the HSD school calendar committee and the process that was written up to try and address the calendar. I wanted to bring up that I feel that this method that they were using in soliciting feedback is very disingenuous. The presentation material is fundamentally biased towards pre-Labor Day start. It does not provide calendar specifics or how that it would affect the rest of the academic calendar. There was no pro-con analysis of the pre-Labor Day change to the current post-Labor Day start. The survey did not ask the basic questions: do you prefer a pre-Labor Day start or a post-Labor Day start? It reflects positions that the presentation material suggested would be solved via a pre-Labor Day start with the basis of a agree or disagree validation. It did not address actually of an opinion or request for the people who are providing information on the survey as what their value to the survey is. But the survey questions are looking to confirm that a pre-Labor Day start material reasoning without asking for honest feedback without asking for honest feedback on the pre-Labor Day change over the current post-Labor Day start. And I feel that this process that has been done is misleading and very manipulative. It's not asking us for honest feedback. Thank you.
All right, Darren, and then Katie.
Good evening. My name is Darren Battaglia, and I have the honor of being a 8th grade science teacher at Pointer Middle School. I'm also a proud member of the Hillsboro Education Association. I'm speaking tonight in support of our bargaining platform that includes lower class size and caseload, safe learning environment, compensation that helps recruit and retain educators, appropriate planning time, and time to manage 504s and IEPs. I have a number, 204. 204 is the number of students that I see daily. 204 is the number of students that rotate through my classroom. It's the number of daily contacts I have. Not so long ago, that number was around 165, and that was difficult, somehow manageable. And then advisory classes were added to the daily schedule. That had the effect of increasing the workload that I have and the workload intensity and decreasing the number of minutes I had to prepare every day. Then about 4 years ago, an 8th period was added to the middle school day so that students take 7 academic classes and 1 advisory class. That again increased my workload and work intensity and decreased the number of minutes I have to prepare every day to just 44 minutes. So now I have 204 students and 44 minutes to prepare every day. Only 44 minutes to teach, know, and understand each student in my classroom. So I've been an educator for 44 years. I have a doctorate in education. So I always go back and I say, okay, what does the research say about this decrease in time that's happening? And the literature on increased workload is pretty clear. It refers to this as a poverty of time. And poverty of time leads to what we're seeing: stress, burnout, conflict between the demands of work and home, and higher teacher attrition rates. As a matter of fact, at Pointer, the science department is only 4 teachers, four positions. In the 8 years I've been at Pointer, we have lost 6 teachers in that department. 4 teachers, 4 positions, we've lost 6 in 8 years. And twice we've had to finish out the school year with a long-term sub because 2 of those teachers have not been able to finish out the year because of health problems. Of those 6 teachers who've left, 4 are no longer in the teaching profession. They've decided not to be teachers. And the other 2 have left for other districts. So unfortunately, the district leadership has often dismissed our concerns, but I'm asking that for the benefit of the teachers, the students in our community, and everybody, that you consider our proposals and accept our proposals. We can't continue this current workload and give the children of Hillsboro the education they deserve. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Katie Ryan, and I am the parent of a current HSD student. I would like to convey my dissatisfaction with the school calendar survey that Hillsboro School District has recently sent to families, and specifically, my disappointment that the questions in the survey have been written with a bias to elicit responses that will favor one particular result. When the data from this survey is collected, it will skew toward one conclusion, which will reflect the bias of the questions rather than accurately indicating the preferences of HSD families. It is extremely disrespectful to families for HSD to offer a survey allowing us to express our opinions and voices, but then craft the survey questions in such a way as to influence our choices. I hope that HSD will write questions without bias when they are crafting surveys in the future. I wanted to call this issue to the attention of the board members, HSD administration, and other stakeholders who will be involved in the school calendar decision-making process, and implore you to take this under your consideration when the metrics of this survey are shared. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Our next agenda item is the Better Building Challenge with Saide and Mia. Saide?
I'm going to kick us off. I'm going to set the stage, and then I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Maya. So back in November of 2023, I believe, the district was notified that we had achieved our energy goal. We participated in this challenge, Better Building Challenge, and we met our goal. Fast forward to April of 2024, our superintendent gets an invitation to Washington, D.C. from the White House Summit of Sustainability and Healthy Schools. And Maya Hawking, our resource conservation manager, graciously accepts to represent the district at this summit. So at the summit, we have the environmental agency organization, we have the Department of Education, we have the Department of Energy, we have representatives from all over the nation, and we are there to receive our award and to participate in the summit. And who better to represent the district than Maya? She's been instrumental in everything resource conservation for this district. And so she's going to walk us through what the Better Building Challenge is, how we got there, how we got the award, and where we go from there.
Hello, everybody. It's good to see so many people here. Thank you to the board and to Superintendent Ryman for finding time on your very full agenda for this hopefully shining moment for HSD. Tonight it is my honor to celebrate HSD's achievements in energy efficiency. HSD has been recognized on the national level by the Department of Energy for achievements in energy conservation, and I'm here to shine that light and share this moment with all of you. Next. Sorry, I don't have the clicker here, so. Okay, so I just want to lay a little bit of a foundation for what am I talking about? Like, who is the DOE and what is this challenge? So the Department of Energy is really working on tuning up buildings, performance, and offering funding for schools and other entities to be able to achieve better building performance. So BBC, which is the Better Buildings Challenge, was put out to all organizations, including school districts, to make a public pledge a commitment towards a goal. And the minimum goal is 20% within 10 years of starting this challenge. We needed to achieve 20% energy savings. Next. So the challenge is still going, and they've actually introduced multiple challenges now, but at the time when they started the Better Buildings Challenge, there's over 900 partners across the US. And the partners are across all industry. We're talking hospitals, large corporations, school districts, any commercial building. But there are only 24 K through 12 public school districts across the nation participating in this challenge, to give you a little perspective. Next. A lot of words here. So HSD's commitment, it's basically a public pledge. There's no con really for this. We're not invested monetarily or anything like that. We have a commitment. We have to develop a plan of energy reduction. We work with technicians from the DOE to help us with that. We showcase a project, and we track and report our energy data. They have all the tools, they have all the experts, and we get to have the benefit of that. So their commitment is the technical assistance, the connections with allies across industry, and then to recognize success, and that's where we're going. So our energy use intensity, we achieved 21% within our goal frame. Next. I know that you all can't read that, but if you look up, when you go home, if this excites you at all, go home, look up the Better Business Challenge, and you'll find a report, and HSD is in that report, right where I pointed that arrow. So I won't bore you with that. Next. Okay, this is the entire list, 23 entities that achieved this goal across the nation in 2023. 23 out of 900 participants, and 3 of those are school districts. Next. So this chart is very simplified. There's a lot of data that goes into this chart. This just shows you a very simplistic visual of what the years look like in terms of energy usage over the course of our challenge. So anybody know what happened in 2020? We took a real deep dive there. So next. This is another simplistic chart. It just shows that we'll hit the highlight. The tall green one is 15% of our 16 campuses achieved, 16 campuses achieved 15% improvement. That's pretty successful. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Next. Okay. So what does 21% look like in the numbers? These are not side-by-side comparisons. It's just data in the year. So in our baseline year, the real number that we want to look at is the EUI, which is our energy intensity, is 128. And in our closing year, which was 2022, it's 101. That's big. That's a big decrease. Anybody here in energy? You would know. Okay, next. Okay, as Saida pointed out, we got an invitation to the White House. So the first invitation got lost in the mail, and then we got a second one, and Travis called me and said, "Do you want to go?" And I said, "How can I say no?" going to White House. So I went to the White House, and all these folks were in attendance at that summit. This was a groundbreaking summit about funding for healthy K through 12 schools and grounds. Big time money available. We just have to go and get it. Next. So this group of people, yes, it's true, I am in the picture. That's it. There's less than 90 folks there that sat in on that summit. So I'm just shining a light on HSD. We had a presence there at this groundbreaking moment. Next. So how did we do it? We turned off all the lights. No, we didn't. But we happened to be in a bond moment too. So we had LED lighting, HVAC improvements, roofing improvements, window improvements. We also added a lot of square footage, which we use more energy, but we installed energy efficient equipment. Our building systems, we have preventative maintenance happening all the time. We reach out to our vendors. We really work on scheduling our HVAC and our lighting back when we're not using our buildings, which is super important. And then, I hate to say it, COVID helped because we shut down our buildings. So, next. How do we keep going? Well, we're going to follow the things that got us there, and that's preventative maintenance. It's a day-to-day working on our systems, working together to make healthy environments. We have to retain skilled staff. We have to keep measuring, and we need to prepare for what's coming next. Next. Moving forward, we're going to work on not just energy, but greenhouse gas emissions, which is a bigger goal. We have also pledged to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2028. It's a lofty goal, but we're going to work on it. Next. Our team in the facilities and maintenance department, we're working on developing an equipment list, what we're going to be looking at for major control system or building system improvements. Again, developing more routine maintenance. We've got a lot of mandates coming towards our buildings that are going to inform our decision making. Next. That's my presentation. I do have something I want to show. We got this pretty thing that hopefully superintendent will find a home for it. Well, I don't know if you have room for questions. Yeah? I'm happy to answer any questions. I know I just stunned you all, right? So, any questions from board member Erica? You want to go ahead first?
First of all, thank you for letting us know we were at the White House being represented. That is like awesome. You said that we can keep it going. You indicated that maybe there might be a few extra dollars out there. Saida, I hope that you can help the board understand where those dollars are, the statement of work for those dollars, and how we can get them. And if any of them that we can leverage to do other things besides, like, can we, characterize better classroom environments for less energy? I don't know. Anything that we can do to know where those dollars are, what the statement of work for those dollars are, and how we can move forward to get as many of those dollars into the district as possible, we would love to know about at your convenience, of course. And thank you again for coming to the White House.
I just had a question over here. I think one of the items that we had talked about and we had advocated as well was, trying to minimize or eliminate unfunded mandates that we get at the district. And I know on here you mentioned one of the things that we have to do because of legislation is change our lighting on our buildings. And that was something that came after our bond work. So is that?
Yes.
Correct. Okay. So that's going to be something for our district to have to pay for.
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify that.
Yes. Oh, yes. A comment. Our new buildings that were built in this last bond, they are already all LED. So we don't have to worry about those.
Can I make a comment on that too? We agree that LED lights are better and more energy efficient. The timeline around the law is what forces us to spend money that we didn't have allocated for that purpose to get it done faster. We normally would have been able to take care of the expense of replacing those light bulbs over time. That's the hardship on us. It's not that the replacement of the light bulbs is a bad idea.
Correct.
Did I get that right?
Yes, you got that right. Yep.
Director Watson?
Want to again thank the community for passing that bond. I think the energy efficient improvements we made in that are a big part of why we were able to achieve these gains. I know we may have an opportunity to do that again soon. So as Director Lopez mentioned, we do have to deal with the remaining lighting, and that's a big cost. Can you sort of estimate how many, what percentage of our buildings have sort of that smart thermostat system where you can regulate the temperatures and whatnot? I can't imagine it's all of them, but is it?
No.
Like, can you estimate?
I know that answer. That's no.
Okay.
We have quite a variety of HVAC systems.
Right.
So we do have, fortunately, we have building control systems, online, it's not online, but remotely, we can control through a program. So we don't have to just control at the system. They're not of that age anymore. But we have components of our systems that are not as efficient as they need to be. But controlling them, we are getting pretty good at that. We don't have smart thermostats, unfortunately. We do have smart controls, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see the difference, right? There's a lot of technology articles about how you can maximize your energy savings using some software and whatnot. But it sounds like what you're saying is there is still work to be done. There are improvements to be made here.
Yeah, certainly.
Be work in potential future bond.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
This last bond, we gained a lot of efficiency ground with the HVAC systems. We retrofitted some with more efficient equipment. Right. We installed a lot of new equipment, but it's making the buildings more efficient overall.
The insulation windows, I think everyone's double pane now, I think.
They should be, yes.
Yeah. And every dollar saved on energy is money we can spend in the classroom, of course. Thanks for doing that work. Thanks for representing us in Washington, D.C. I feel like I had one other question, but sorry.
If you think of it, you can.
Sure. I can email you.
Call me.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Maya. This is funny because I do my safe school trainings, and I've been taught that if you get an invite to go to Las Vegas or go to the White House, you should immediately delete that email. And so I deleted the first email, and then I got an email that said, you don't want to come to the White House? And so I called Maya, and it's true. That was a big deal for you to be able to represent us there, and I appreciate you taking time out of your busy life to go and do that and to learn on behalf of our school district all these other opportunities that might exist for us to improve our practice. Last year, we published in our Look Inside newspaper to households in HSD
The title was How Green is HSD? And we talked about the things that we do from our STEM education in elementary school to sustainable ag and sustainable design at high school, all the different things that we've been committed to with our bond. And I think it really speaks to the shared value that we have as a staff and as a school board around being green, being energy efficient, and being efficient with taxpayer resources. And I just think this is a win-win type of leadership that you've adopted, where it shows the community how much we care about the earth and how much we care about our money. And so I really appreciate, Maya, your advocacy and the passion that you have for this, quietly behind the scenes, making us exemplary and drawing attention to these types of practices. I hope that they're inspiring to other school districts as well, because as a public agency, we have a big responsibility to bring forward some of these sustainability and stewardship policies that you have. So thank you for that. I appreciate you.
You're very welcome.
I did remember my thing. That's okay.
Oh.
I have the pleasure of serving on the HEA bargaining team, which thank you all for coming. It's amazing. And what it wasn't end up being a bargaining issue, but it's something we discussed is, the occasions where people need to be in the building when maybe it was unexpected, and how quickly you can adjust the temperature and environmental controls to make that happen. So but I think we discussed it in the room, and hopefully it's filtered out to everybody, and Maya has made clear all of these things are possible. Just a little bit, it's more planning. Like it's more, you can't just go to the wall and turn the thermostat up anymore. It requires like communication with another department and making it happen. So I'm glad to see that we were able to figure out why it's harder to make the room warmer or colder, and that we're getting some benefit from that.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
I want to take pictures.
Something to be proud of. Just take a picture with Maya surrounded by.
I want a picture with the trophy. Go to the side. You didn't want it? You wanted to get a picture of the White House.
I just stand back here, right?
You couldn't have in the back.
I just stand back here. Yeah, I'm just gonna stand back here.
You're ready to go. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. Our next agenda item is the October 1st, 2024 enrollment report with Brian. Brian?
All right, thank you. Is this on? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, this report you can reference in your board packet. And so I'm just going to hit a couple of highlights. On October 1st of this year, our enrollment of registered students was 18,727. That's 185 more students than we had at the same time last year. And that represents about a 1% increase in student growth. Now, 1% doesn't seem like a lot, but for the past 10 years, we've been declining in student enrollment every year for the past 10 years. So to see that reverse is a great piece of news. The chart below just shows that every grade level that we've gone up a little bit, including a big spike at 7th and 8th grade where we increased 129 students. One thing to note that this includes CityView Charter in those numbers up above. So we've broken out CityView down below and for that same time span, and you can see that they have an enrollment of 411 students this year. So we need to subtract those out of that top chart. There's some additional information down below. I won't go through all that, but it shows you information about students who came into the district, including 73 transferring into the Hillsboro School District from other districts, and then students who have transferred out to other districts or are going for alternate options such as online school or private schools. Another thing to note is that very last bullet on that page. So the Northwest Regional ESD has reported a decrease of a little over 1,000 students from 2023-24 to this school year. So the declining enrollment is a trend that is in our region and also statewide, but obviously it's good news that we've increased this year by 185 students. On the second page of your report is that 10-year look back where we've gone from, in 2015, 20,654 students to the 18,727 of this year. So again, this is the first year that we've reversed that trend and have increased our enrollment. Just for your information, the enrollment's important, obviously, because that's how we do our staffing. And the staffing ratios since 2018 are shown down below. After we came back from COVID, we started staffing at kinder at 26-1, first through third at 24-1, and 3 through 6 at 28-1, and then 7 through 12 at 30-1. Those numbers have remained the same since we came back from COVID in 21. They are the exact same numbers that we use to staff today. Thank you. Yes, that is true. And then the final chart is the increase in diversity that you can see based on the chart below. You can see that our student diversity has slowly been increasing through this time period, which shows from 2019 to 2025.
Brian, I have a
Yeah.
question. You got maybe a question? Oh, yeah, sorry.
No, that's it. Thank you.
Sorry, just, our friends from HEA jumped in with their opinion right before I was about to say the same thing.
Yes.
And I'm trying to reconcile in my mind how the decrease in enrollment that we're seeing in our now saying we're down to 18. I think when we came on the board, it was 20. But no, it wasn't quite that high. But but yet they're feeling this I'm trying to reconcile what I'm hearing about the classroom side with what we're seeing and the numbers and how we get those two to come together. Because I feel like we're on two different train tracks and we are not parallel right now.
Yeah, so the enrollment number is what we base our staffing on. So as that number decreased, we would obviously have fewer staff if we're basing it on the same allocated number of staff since 21.
So is that based on the old current service level or okay.
I'd like to follow up with a little bit on that same topic. Thank you for your presentation and the report. So understanding these staffing ratios, are these goals that are sometimes met and sometimes not met? What would you say about, so for instance, 7 to 12, the allocated ratio is 30-1. Do you have data on what percentage of classrooms are higher than that and which are low, how much meet that threshold?
Yeah, I don't have that on me right now, but we can get that to you, definitely.
Is it your impression that it's a lot that don't, or only a few that don't?
I would say that it depends, but the average I would say would be above that, because when you're looking at those numbers, we staff on those numbers, but you have to remember that at any time there's a certain percentage of teachers that are on their prep period, so that would increase the numbers in the rest of the class.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. That's good background to have. I think to the extent I don't want you to do a huge amount of extensive research just for me, but to the extent you have it handy in the future, at some point in a board update, it might be interesting to have what data we do have about the actual class size, the median class size, or staffing ratio, really, I guess, as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
It wouldn't just be for him. I think more than he would be interested in, what percentage of classrooms are meeting our targets, what percentage of classrooms are not meeting our targets, how many are under, how many are over. I think that's something that's time well spent.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
And overall, we appreciate the data. We always put data junkies over here, but part of it is understanding if what we're hearing is an anomaly, or is there something else impacting that we're not. That's what we're trying to get to.
Yeah, I understand.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Brian? Oh,
Of course.
Dr. Watson?
Yes, I'm very heartwarmed to see that we are different than the regional trend, losing 1,000 students in Northwest Regional ASD, and we're up 185. That's great. I did think that post-pandemic we would see this, especially that 7th and 8th grade number of students returning in middle school. Glad to see that. The second bullet point in kindergarten, I'm having trouble sort of parsing that one. So if you sort of talk me through that, the October 24th, there's a difference of plus 40 from projection, and our increase in kinder was 19. So sort of, is there a difference between projection and like what is the relevance of that bullet point in relationship to the 19 student growth? I'm just having trouble sort of understanding how that second bullet point in kindergarten matches the data.
So we're basing it just on the projection. So what we do is we look at the last 3 years of kindergarten enrollment and we take the average to get that projection. And so what we projected from the last 3 years was 40 less than what showed up, if that makes sense. So there's a difference.
Okay, so what this bullet point is trying to tell us is we projected fewer kindergartners.
Correct.
And it ended up being not just the same number of kindergartens, but 19 more.
Yeah, based on a 3-year trend is what we projected.
So now I get it. So the projection was that we would have fewer students at kindergarten based on our trend. And not only did we have more students, or at least as many, we had 19 more than what we had the year before.
Yes, you said it better than me. Thank you.
Put that in the bullet point, but I get it now. No, it makes sense. Just the wording was a little confusing to me. Thanks for clarifying that.
So if you add on what Mark just said, his clarification, then add on some of the data that Patrick was talking about, then I think it gives us a little bit of a clearer picture of what's actually happening, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, anecdotally, clearly, the room is full of people who think these numbers are not that accurate. So as board members, we'd love to sort of have some actual hard data.
Yeah. Correct again. And these are what we staff on. I'm not saying that's what's in every classroom, right?
Oh, right,
exactly.
that's true too.
This is what we're staffed on.
That was a really helpful clarification.
Yeah.
I think we're curious to know what the class median is also. So thank you for your future data.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Brian.
Yeah, thank you.
Our next agenda item is the strategic plan and integrated guidance update with Brooke, Michelle, and Beth. And I'll let you guys decide who wants to go first.
All right. All those who are not interested in strategic plan can go. It's all right. I get it. It's fine. So yes, we're here to talk to you about the strategic plan for our planned October update. And also you're going to see some repetition, a little bit of repetition from the data we shared in your retreat in August. But the reason we're doing that is to show you how our strategic plan is actually interwoven with our integrated guidance work at the state level. So you're going to see us kind of volleying back and forth between one another and occasionally popping over to Michelle for a little bit of context there. So that gives you a little background. And just as a bit of a refresher, this current strategic plan, which is spanning 2023, 2027, it's our 5th strategic plan that we've had since unification in the late 90s. We delayed it a couple years, first because of COVID and not thinking we were ready to be strategically planning when we were still trying to deal with that. And then to align with the integrated guidance that we knew was coming from the state level. So, so in addition to sharing just basic information about this, we'll also kind of preview what we're looking toward for our year 2 goals, which is what is happening this school year.
I'm not as tall as Beth, so I'm going to use the platform here. As you remember, our integrated program, so that began in the 23-25 biennium, and what that did was it brought 6 comprehensive grants under one umbrella with common elements and goals. And so those goals helped us to align our strategic plan, as Beth has just shared. It also was able then to bring streamlined feedback from our community and that engagement process, both for strategic planning and for planning for integrated programs, as well as helped us to focus on de-siloing work. Those grants could be very siloing, but it brought us together to really plan in a more thoughtful and integrated way moving forward with funding, and also able to then leverage funding as well to ensure that the funding that we did have from those limited amounts in grant funding could also help to achieve the maximum outcome out of those goals that we possibly could achieve. Michelle's going to speak a little bit to the 4 grants that we have under integrated programs and what that looks like in Hillsboro School District.
Thank you, Brooke. I'm shorter than both of them, so I'm just going to stay seated if you guys will humor me. So over the last couple years, we've had some pretty major state grants sent our way, thankfully. We have High School Success is a big one. Student Investment Account was next, and then Early Literacy. And so the whole concept around integrated guidance is to do your community outreach, look at your data, align with your strategic plan when you're planning for the upcoming years. And so it used to be kind of just funneled down into silos, one grant at a time. And that would go from planning to requesting, getting the application in, and then also administering the funds. And so this gives us kind of a broader view. We've been fairly lucky in Hillsboro to kind of always taken that and braided grants in order to support what we think is best for students in learning. But this is clearly aligned with our strategic plan, and this is probably the tightest we've ever been. So our annual report requirements, so this is specific to the SIA grant, where we've had to check some additional boxes as part of the legislation for those funds. And that would be, and this is all school districts in Oregon, it's not just Hillsboro. We have to report on our own progress. We have to present an annual report to you. You guys hear us talk about this quite often. We have to post things on our website. We collaborate with our charter school, CityView. And then we have to look at our performance growth targets. After we set those with the state of Oregon, we have to check in with the state of Oregon on how those are going and whether or not we need to adjust what we're doing under those grant programs. All right, I get one more slide. Still has my name on it. So this is a pie chart. You guys have seen similar charts like this from me in the past, but this is really focused just on integrated guidance grants. You can see that the biggest gray area of the fat pie is just student investment accounts. So you can see in proximity what the funding amounts are. And for us in Hillsboro, we have different buckets within the student investment account that we're spending in. Increased instructional time, well-rounded learning, student safety and wellness, and then class size and caseload. We've addressed that with a student investment account over the last couple of years.
All right, so it's back over to me. And here you'll see us kind of pop back to some visuals from our strategic plan. And as a reminder, within our strategic plan, we have 5 goal areas that are listed here. Within those 5 goal areas, we've identified 5 performance targets, one of which is kind of bifurcated into 4-year graduation and 5-year completion. And in addition to those 6 goals are 14 additional goals that we track on an annual basis for a total of 20. But we're going to take the example of the goal area, safe and supported learners, to show you how that connects with our integrated guidance work. So within our strategic plan, under safe and supported learners, one of our performance targets is student attendance. And so here you see a dashboard. This is a snapshot of the dashboards that are available to our school level administrators. They can drill down into these accounts and look at individual grade levels. They can look at it from the lens of specific groups. As you can see with attendance, our identified focal groups are Native American and Alaska Native, as well as Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander. Those were identified through a data dig as we were developing our strategic plan as students that were most in need of support with regular attendance. So that's what you're seeing there. And then here is a snapshot of what the integrated guidance report looks like. And you'll see where the yellow arrow is pointing to is a section on regular attenders. And within integrated guidance is also a place for us to track our regular attendance. So here, again, is just an overview of our approach to strategic plan accountability. And we've kind of broken that at the broadest level into 3 buckets, and it's our accountability to our community and our promise to engage with families, both broadly and through focal group interactions and gathering feedback through one-on-one empathy interviews, through small group focus conversations, and then also through some surveying that people have access to, communicating via our website, et cetera. Our schools obviously are doing their own data digs and working in professional learning communities to work on ways to enhance our performance in our various goal areas. And then at the central office, we're working on building the structures that will allow those things to happen, the actual dashboards themselves, and creating action plans and developing artifacts that can be shared. So here's just another way to look at it, and it kind of gives you a little bit more information on a quarterly basis, what things are happening at what time. All of our students are given the annual survey in May. We do have a survey that has been available to our parents and community members. The last 2 years, we've given that survey, and it's kind of been a mirror of what the students take, and it's just a long, like 25 question survey. But when we looked at the kind of results we were getting from that and what we really wanted to achieve from asking for that feedback was something that was a little bit more concentrated and informative. So I believe on the next slide, we have an example of how we have formulated that for this year. And it's basically just taking the survey from 25 plus questions down to just 6. And there's 1 question aligned to each performance target area and then an overall question. But the kind of the unique thing about it is that for each of those 5 main questions, we have provided some background information, kind of a did you know section, because what we were feeling was that sometimes when you ask people questions without any context, you might not necessarily be unearthing their true feelings on a topic. So we thought, why not try? We'll see how it goes. Giving a bit of background information, a little bit of data, a little bit of information on the importance of these different performance target areas, and then ask for the feedback. So it's something we're going to try and see how it goes. But our Equity Access and Engagement Officer, Francesca Sinapi, is giving those either 1 at a time or 2 at a time to our parent focal, not focal group, sorry, our family engagement groups. Sorry, I was getting my terms mixed up. So she's doing that for kind of the one-on-one type feedback, and then the larger survey will be available to everyone in the spring. All right, and just another recap from your summer work session, 20 sub-goals, I already mentioned that. Within our first year of the strategic plan, 23-24, we experienced positive growth within 12 of those goals. 4 goals, we experienced a decline. 2 of them, we're still awaiting ODE data. We don't get information on grad rates and 5-year completion until January, so we'll be getting that in January of 25 for the class of 24. And then 2 goals, we needed a new data tracking tool, So here is a lift out from your accountability report year 1. This is performance target 1 around 3rd grade reading. We went up overall over 2.17 percentage points, which is great. Experienced a slight decline with our focal group of Hispanic and Latino students, and an increase that was roughly similar to our overall average for our students accessing special education.
I'm going to have a Maya moment really quickly before I go into some summary points around the 23-24 integrated program summary. Our district has become a state leader in our accountability report, and a lot of what Beth has been sharing how we have taken integrated guidance and programs aligned with our strategic plan and how we move forward, not only in our data systems, but within our communication and feedback loops. So I just want to take a moment to thank everyone who works on that, who implements it every day. Travis sits on the state level accountability committee, and his leadership and his work, we should be very proud in our district for the work that we have done. To do something like a summary report because of all of the data and the feedback loops actually is an easier thing for me to do. You do have the full report in your board packet. You will have the full report on the HSD website, but I just want to take a moment to celebrate that and recognize the hard work that we're all doing to make this happen. So in a synopsis of the progress and the challenges, each of our areas, I was able to capture kind of in a lengthy report, but I'm going to do a few bullets tonight. Because of the work, especially around in SIA and our early literacy grant, we have been able to see a lot of great progress in literacies, especially where we report on that third grade level. If you looked at that longitudinal performance growth target, it's at third grade, but we also are starting to see cohort trends trending up as well. So within our own advocacy and our value in multilingualism, we're seeing that that the resources and support being put towards early literacy is really paying off. I think the challenge for us is we do live in this kind of dual land of, we report still on ESPA data, but we know that the importance of assessing and supporting our multilingual learners is such a great importance to us. So we are often reporting, and especially on our strategic plan, on running records and ensuring that we are evaluating our students in the gifts and assets that they have within their languages, which often isn't reflected in ESPA data. So we're reporting on one thing to our state, we're sharing the progress in our strategic plan, but we hold ourselves accountable in both. So I just wanted to share that was the challenge that I wrote in our report, as well as we acknowledge as we talk about reading and literacy every time we're here.
All right. So our next performance target is around attendance, and we kind of already looked at that because that was our exemplar for how we are integrating our strategic plan and integrated programs. So not much to share on that one.
So attendance. We know state, nationally, attendance is a challenging thing for our students and families. And so we are proud to see an increase in attendance, and you can see that trend and upward pattern, but of course we are not to where we want to be. So it's the continuation of the work within our climate and culture, welcoming students, very much of what we do every day in our daily practices. I also think too, the resources and supports that we have allocated in some of the grants outlined in high school success and also SIA. So some of the additional counseling supports and resources that we've been able to put into place, some of the outside counseling supports that we've been able to bring in as well from those grants, still is something that we're working on, supporting students and families in mental and behavioral health. And how do we as a community wrap around our students from the daily work that our educators do, but also our outside providers. And those pieces are really, I think, something that we're still seeing as a challenge. And we recognize that that definitely impacts attendance. And so we'll continue to work with our community to do those wraparound services and supports of what students and families need to get to our schools.
All right. Our next performance target is actually not reflected in integrated programs because it's our own metric, because we feel really strongly that students who are engaged in extracurricular programs and activities have more motivation to come to school regularly and on time and perform well in their classes. So we internally have developed a tracking system that allows us to know all of the various activities and sports and different clubs that our students are involved in at all levels of our organization. And we have set a goal for ourselves of a really pretty aggressive goal by the end of the strategic plan of having 66% of all of our students engaged in at least one extracurricular activity. It's a very aggressive goal because it's not necessarily something that we receive funding for, and it requires a lot of creativity. It requires a lot of dedication, and we are truly, truly grateful for everyone who makes these programs happen. So you'll see that we increased over 5 percentage points from our baseline year of 22-23, which was really great. And you'll see our focal groups also both experienced increases, both in our Hispanic Latina focal group and in our female students. All right, so I think we could probably go to the next one. I think I spoke to most of that.
Quick question.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I know band is like a class you take, but it's also, it would be considered an extracurricular activity too, right? So besides being in symphonic band class, I guess participating in something like marching band would be an extracurricular, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. So back to a performance target that is on our integrated programs list would be our 9th grade on track metric. And this one gets a little complicated, and I know that our board has received this explanation, but maybe for the purpose of those in the audience who might not know why we include both an ODE calculation for this and an HSD, it's because the ODE calculation simply takes the overall number of credits needed to graduate in Oregon, which is 24, and divides by 4, the number of years in high school, and says, if you've completed 6 credits within your 9th grade year, then you are on track to graduation. We like to take that a step further and say that 3.5 of those 6 credits have to be in core classes, because we know that your performance in the core is a little bit more indicative of you being on track to graduate than simply having 6 credits that could be a majority electives, for example. So, you'll see our performance there, and interestingly enough, we saw some slight increases in our HSD calculation, while at the same time seeing a decrease in our ODE calculation. And I know people are like, how is that possible? But it's because it's based on the performance in the baseline year, right? So you're still having performance that in the ODE calculation that is technically above the HSD calculation, but in terms of the longitudinal growth from one year to the next, that's where you're seeing the differential there.
Okay, so within our on-track work, some of the pieces that we celebrate, and I just want to first recognize Francesca and her team. We know that transitional times can be very challenging. The 6th to 7th grade, I always love teaching 7th grade for this reason, is the 6th to 7th grade and making sure students feel that welcome and know the routines and practices within that movement of the next level. The 8th to 9th grade, the same way of, okay, I just kind of figured out middle school and now I'm getting to high school and I'm learning a whole new thing. Those transitions are so important. So that 8th to 9th grade transition, Francesca and her team have really wrapped around looking also at culturally specific clubs and activities for students. How can we best support our staff in welcoming our students in a variety of clubs, a variety of family engagement activities to ensure that they feel that that next transition is as great as it possibly can be for them. Another component as well is that specific investment in on-track work, especially in that 9th grade. So the high school success, the investment in additional grad coaches, the investment in additional counseling from SIA, ensuring that we're having quarterly meetings here and coaching sessions in our high schools of what is working best on track systems and how do we best support students. So with supporting students in that welcoming piece, with looking at data and the coaching sessions that we're providing, that's been a real focus. The piece that Beth spoke to, there has been such an emphasis and focus on core, that now we are also, as a reflect back of how do we bring in our elective teachers, the elective courses, to make sure that we are in those conversations and coaching cycles. Also are doing the same thing with elective teachers and elective practices to ensure that on track in both areas of how we evaluate it is trending up.
All right, and now to move on to four-year graduation and five-year completion. So we chose, for the purpose of being able to give a comparator set of data, had to go back to class of 22, because like I mentioned a few moments ago, we don't get grad rates until the January following the grad year, right? So all we have currently is grad data for the class of 2023. So this is the only one that's shifted a year back from the other data points. So in 2022, our grad rate was 86.33%, four-year cohort grad rate. In 2023, that was 86.18, very close, just a very slight decline from the prior year. But then we also felt like we didn't want to lose the ability to track our focal groups. So here is the only data point where you're going to get the actual performance within each of those. And then in next year's report, we'll be able to provide that differential versus the grad rate for the class of 2024. So just a little bit of background on why this is a bit different. But so hopefully that all makes sense. You see that in this particular performance target, we have a number of focal groups identified. We really know that we want every single one of our students to attain graduation or completion. And so we are very much focused on ensuring that those students who are having a little bit of a more difficult time attaining graduation, that they're getting the supports they need. And then for five-year completion, this is really a pretty shining star for our district. Being above 90% is pretty impressive. And we did show significant growth from our rates that we received last January. Again, that would be for students who should have graduated in 22. They completed by 2023. That rate, as compared to grads in 21 who completed in 22, was up 7.5 percentage points, which is amazing.
So much to celebrate on progress, as you can tell. I almost ran out of room on the slide. The investment in academic option support, the investment in our programs within Oak Street campus and specifically at our Pathway Center, and the work that our staff do to support students up to 21, I think really shows a direct correlation to that fifth-year completer piece as well. Those pieces and investments have come out of integrated programs grants. They are able to best support students and eliminate barriers. For example, they instruct students up to 7 p.m. at some days of the week at the Pathway Center to ensure that students, if they're working all day, can come after work and earn their diploma or their GED if what they're choosing to do. So I think that investment and thinking creatively of how to best support students, especially coming out of COVID, has definitely been proving well for us. I think a challenge is just the continuation of communication about the supports and resources that are available to students up to 21 and how to not only bring students into the doors, but also to ensure that we are providing the supports and resources that they need to complete a high school diploma. So this isn't connected to our integrated grants, but the support of the summer grant that we got from the state, which is a one-time investment of $1.5 million, definitely helped us so much this summer as well. Students being able to access credits and support throughout the summer definitely has paid off. We hope to see that another summer grant will be open and available for us to apply to so that we can continue to provide supports to students during the school day, in the summer months, and even into the evening hours. Okay, so we spoke about that in the 23-25, we had our first biennium of integrated programs. That means we're in the application process for the 25-27 application of integrated programs. So you'll see currently we're in the engagement process. Beth spoke about some of the ways that we engage with our community to get our feedback, not only to hold ourselves in accountability of how we're doing our strategic planning goals, but also to inform the next application of our integrated programs. We will submit our application by March 1st, and that will help us to move the next biennium of our strategic plan forward in the alignment of the grant funds that we have and how to best move our goals forward and the activities that we plan for and how we fund those activities to make our goals happen. Okay, Beth, you're wrapping us up.
Okay, so as we mentioned, ongoing community engagement happening, 3 data summits with our principals, and what that looks like is a dedicated large block of time at our pre-K-12 admin meeting 3 times a year. The first one was held on October 8th, and really gives principals a good chance to dig into their school-specific and student-specific data so that they can make adjustments where needed so that they can continue making progress toward goals that we've identified. And what are some other good highlights here? So in February of 2025, we'll give you our next strategic planning update. And again, at that time, we'll be able to provide some mid-year updates on a number of our performance target areas, and we will be able to share the 2024 grad rate data with you that comes out in January. So we're looking forward to that. And then, of course, a full year wrap-up will come to you again at your retreat next August.
I just wanted to highlight again, the full report is in the board packet. And again, we will have the comprehensive report published on our HSD website prior to November 1st as part of the reporting that we need to do in our annual report to the Oregon Department of Education. And now we will take questions.
Yeah, I don't have really a question more because I've reviewed this before, but I just want to thank you again for just the way the information is presented and the transparency. I think that's one thing that we are ahead. And when we're advocating for funding, if we can show, here's how we're measuring our success, or here's how we're implementing these dollars, that we have something for us as a district to back up when we go to Salem and say, you're not just throwing money at us, we're actually targeting and trying to implement specific things in our district. So thank you again for this. And I know this is our first year and we have continue to have work to do, but I am really excited for the next 4 years.
Thanks. So this question is a kind of big picture question about the financials slide. So I'll direct it to Michelle, but of course, person to answer. So as I was looking at that pie chart slide that we had about the student investment account funding, it occurred to me that I'm not sure during our budgeting that I've ever got this clear in my head. We say that a certain amount is used for, the SIA is used for caseload, a certain amount for instructional time, a certain amount for student safety and wellness. I don't know who or how exactly we come up with those figures because the board just approves the budget with all the things in it from both the general fund and the student investment account. And so I'm wondering, say something now.
Yeah, no, I'm actually excited to respond this way because we typically during budget development, I share exactly what positions are in which bucket. So I'm happy to do that for what we planned for 24-25 for you. It's color coded, yellow for student safety and wellness, and the blue is typically the class size and caseload. And I have a number of FTE for counselors, psychologists, and classroom teachers. So I'll happy to share that back.
Yeah, and I have a vague memory of from last year looking at these positions are funded by the SIA. I guess I'm curious how we come up with that in the sense that couldn't we, this all comes from, we don't have, a separate bank account necessarily that we pay employees out of this bank account or that bank account. Couldn't we, is it essentially what we're doing is that your team, the leadership team, comes up with a list of things that we would not have if we didn't have the SIA, and then decides to decides to make those the SIA funded items?
That's how it originated, was when we were first receiving the SIA funds. Our first year, we projected for the full funding amount, and we only received 1/3 of it. And that was just about equal to the amount that we were having to reduce from the general fund. So we identified things that were eligible under the grant that were in the general fund, and we reduced them from the general fund and used the grant. We did that twice. So if we really, rewind back to the beginning, there used to be different colors for things that were actually original and actual investments versus things that we had to reduce from the general fund to bridge a budget gap.
Yeah, the reason I ask is that I imagine if we suddenly didn't have the SIA funds, the board might choose to reduce positions in a variety of ways. We might not just say, okay, everything that we are saying is funded by SIA are the things we're going to suddenly cut. So I was just curious, how we decide, since all of these things are very important, and it's a non-competitive grant, so we know we rely on having it in future years, how we decide what we're going to allocate to it and not, since it's all essentially guaranteed funding based on student formula. So I think I have a better understanding now that we just sort of do an exercise. So these, from our original idea of these are new things we're going to do, just kind of carry those forward into the year and say we're going to continue allocating these positions to the SIA.
Yeah, we're actually beginning the process now for 25-27 plan and getting feedback and prioritizing because, unfortunately it is legislative session. We may not know what our state school fund is going to be until the end of June. Right. So making sure that we have contingencies in place, we have to do kind of levels of priorities of what we need to keep to best support the system and our strategic plan and our staff.
If I could just add a little bit, as somebody who was advocating as the SIA got funded, I think this is part of the story we've shied away from a little bit for a minute, but then now it's something we talk about pretty regularly. The original intent of the SIA was to be targeted funds for these specific areas of concern that the state legislators had heard as they did their road trip around the whole, trying to find the commonalities for all the places of the state, not just urban districts, not just rural district problems. And over time, as we've spent way too much time, I'm going to ring the same bell again, as we spent too much time debating the accuracy of current service level and the inadequacy of that funding, what we found is that the buckets that are allocated for those targeted funds are also the things we're working on generally. So we've been using SIA to just backfill gaps, and that's not was the original intent of the SIA. And hopefully we can make some progress regarding current service level this year. But again, I'll save that speech for later. But I've said it enough times about that CSL. But yeah, so the specific allocation of the people to SIA dollars, it sort of happened, at least just organically, as we started to have to backfill the budgetary gaps that we would have had to make, essentially.
And I understand the reason we allocate these things in these categories is because the legislature wanted the SIA to be uniquely used in these categories. I guess on a very broad level, I always find myself asking, if we're getting funding on a per student formula basis from two different sources, and we're using it for very similar purposes that's almost commingled, does it really add value to spend time administratively delineating what comes from which one? So, for another day.
Hence the line item in our legislative priorities about please streamline the 38 categorical grants that we must manage as school districts in the state, because it is an administrative burden.
I know that you guys are still with us because we're talking about that strategic plan, and I'll always be near and dear to that strategic plan. But my comment is actually to Michelle, because now I'm thinking in my head, well, how, if the SIA, the grant that we just talked about, that was supposed to be targeted, that was the result of a conversation that went around the state, Great. But the governor is talking about potentially, if we pray really super hard, we might get 11.3, we need 11.6, and if we don't get 11.6, does that mean that the SIA is impacted? If we don't, what I'm trying to understand is if we're going to get, if we don't get the 11.6 that we really need, are we going to, do we have enough SIA to survive? Or is that going to be impacted as well if we're not, quote unquote, fully funded?
Everything will be impacted. And
Bring back
as we have
graph
done in the
chart
past,
things you had
we
with
have
the,
to,
with the
like,
dotted lines. I love those.
Okay. And that's what I needed to confirm, because we talk about the grants as if they're separate. And what Patrick is saying is,
He's right.
the truth is everything is going to be impacted, whether we get 10.5 or whether we get 11.3. Thank God she's actually talking about 11.3. But what if we only get 11.1, or what if we only get 10.9? And
The thing too is, what if we only get 11.3? Because that is still a cuts budget for us.
right, it is, and it's not just a cut budget. This is a lost budget, and we're committed to trying to make sure that we don't lose staff.
Yeah.
And I don't know, this is what makes me go absolutely crazy. I love the Pacific Northwest. I love this state. I think it's wonderful. The most beautiful state I've ever lived in, but my goodness, who picked this funding system? That's what I want to know. Sorry.
No. Just a point of interest to your point. What I was working on today was just going back through all the years, all the numbers. Since 2002 to 2024, Hillsboro School District has had to cut more than $80 million. I mean, not every year was a down year, but there were a lot of down years. So that's why when we talk current service level, it's like, well, but that's based on 22 years and more than $80 million of cuts. So is current service, what's that really telling us? You know what I mean? So that's why our legislative advocacy materials talk about accuracy, adequacy, and investment. And so the numbers we're proposing that the state fund us at are quite a bit larger than 11.3.
Right. And I think the other thing I'm saying on the back end is that as we go through and go to Sam and with our lobbyists, and we advocate for this funding, we have to help them understand that. I don't know what you thought you were doing, but I need you to do it the right way. Because this is not working. It's not working for them, it's not working for us, it's not working for our children. And I don't care if it's rural or urban. That's irrelevant. This is not working.
So does this serve as our SIA legal obligation update?
Yes, so in the past, we've just focused on SIA.
Yeah.
Now, with integrated programs, we give an annual report more comprehensively. So that's why we also saw some other pieces of the financial puzzle of our grants. So you will expect this every year from us, more in a comprehensive 6-grant report instead of the one SIA.
So I guess to be fair, like at least ODE has streamlined this part, right? So progress being made, right? So this is like this is right, but this is our strategic plan update, but also serves as our integrated grant planning for. So this makes us legally compliant for the next allocation of the student investment account.
Yes, and I would say because of our leadership in Hillsboro School District, for us to give a strategic plan update and an integrated guidance update is because of our thoughtful planning and the alignment of our goals. So I think that's additionally what makes Hillsboro unique is that we knew this was coming, and we also had an October update. And so for us to be able to do two things was a natural fit for us, but that's because of the strong, thoughtful work we've done.
So it's less ODE, minimizing duplicative work, and more you guys. Okay. All right. But as long as we're minimizing duplicative work, I'm a fan anyway. So, okay.
I can remember when I used to meet with Mike before he retired, he would always tell me about the brilliant work Travis was doing, getting these things organized and coordinated. And so it's great to see that it's continuing under Brooke. So thank you for that.
Yeah. I don't want you to misunderstand anything I said tonight. You guys are doing a rock awesome job. Thank you for keeping all of the accountability coming from that strategic plan. That was love, sweat, and tears, and I'm so glad to see that we're making this progress. Now we've got some more progress to make.
My last point I wanted to make was just to say thank you and appreciate all the work that all the district teams do on that goal regarding extracurricular activities. I know it's not an ODE goal. I know it's something that this board values and has made your life harder, but I think we also know the data about how it improves graduation rates when students are involved in extracurricular activities. So I love the fact that we have that as one of our strategic plan goals. I understand that it makes everybody's job a little bit harder, but I think it's worth it, and thank you for doing it.
Great. Thank you. Our next agenda item is the financial report with District Financial Officer Michelle.
Thank you. I do actually have a couple of highlights I'd like to touch on tonight, if that's okay. They'll be short, I promise. We do, every month I report on our example for our leadership principal support framework and the work that we do kind of as a collaboration across our systems. Most recently, we met with Facilitron, who provides the platform that we use for building reservations, and facilities team and finance team. We met to review kind of some comparisons and actual costs for our facility use. So we are kind of working through a process for bringing forward another fee schedule for you guys to look at that would be both simplified and more realistic in terms of charging what it actually costs for facilities use. So that's something to watch for. Also, a couple examples in my financial report on strategies we're using to bridge the budget gap. You guys are aware, union partners are aware, we have a $9.5 million budget gap in 24-25. So we've implemented several strategies to kind of get us through there with a minimal impact to students. And one of those would be a reduction of 5% to all of our department budgets, which is not school budgets, but it's department budgets. And so everyone's working. Jeff Jones is working with department leaders to get that in place. And then an example of a position that's not being refilled at the central office, our contracts and agreements position. So that work is being redistributed. So just take confidence that those things are actually occurring. And then a special thank you from Royal Moore Buick GMC. They donated $22,500 to our athletics sponsorship program. So thank you. And I can answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Michelle? No? Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes our agenda items and brings us to HCU and HEA reports. You can decide who can go first.
Good evening, Chair Pantoja, Vice Chair Watson, fellow school board members, Superintendent Ryman, and administrative leaders. My name is Mary Kay Babcock, and my pronouns are she, her, her, and I'm a proud music educator of 28 years, and I'm honored to be your Hillsboro Education Association president. First, I want to thank Una Marr, Zachary Clark, Janet Phillips, Dr. Darren Battaglia, and David Jester for their thoughtful contributions tonight. Their words reflect the passion and the dedication we all share for our students and our colleagues. I'd also like to thank our members who are supporting us tonight here in person this late evening, and also the support of students, parents, and community members. We are stronger together. For the past 10 months, our bargaining team has worked tirelessly to secure a contract that supports both educators and students. We've made progress on critical issues, including preserving key protections on academic freedom. For the past 10 months, our bargaining team has worked tirelessly to secure a contract that supports both educators and students. We made progress on critical issues, including preserving key protections on academic freedom, just cause, and due process, ensuring that TOSAs are compensated at an hourly teaching rate for any time they spend teaching, securing more time and support for educators during classroom and building moves after the last day of in-service, increasing personal leave days, a joint commitment to advancing equity, anti-racism, and anti-bias across our schools. These are important gains, but we're still facing significant challenges around our bargaining platforms. While we would love to bring contract negotiations to a close, we must ensure that these critical priorities are addressed for the benefit of our entire school community. Our bargaining platforms address urgent and very real needs for both our students and our staff, as emphasized earlier by our fellow HEA members. Unfortunately, the district's recent financial proposal is a step backwards, and it does not reflect what our members need or what they deserve. Our educators, who are already stretched thin and being asked to accept less, while demands in the classroom continue to rise, this is unacceptable. We are calling on you, the school board, and our district to collaborate with us to bridge the budget gap without jeopardizing the future of our educators or our students. Our members have been very clear with what they want: class size and caseloads that support student success, a safe learning environment for students and staff, compensation that helps recruit and retain educators, appropriate planning time to meet student needs, and time to manage IEPs and 504s to fully ensure our students are supported. These issues are not just about our working conditions, they're about creating the learning environment our students need to succeed and thrive in public education. I hope that we can find a path forward that benefits our students, their families, and the dedicated educators who serve them. Thank you. Good evening. May it please the board, the supervisor, the admin, and all here assembled who it's probably past your bedtime. I know it's past mine. Thank you so much for staying, if you were able to stay here in person. My name is Tiffany St. Clair King, and I'm here to give the report on behalf of the Hillsboro Classified United Union, also known as HCU. My current roles are I am the executive board secretary, I'm on the bargaining team, I'm a worksite leader, and my work serving the students is as a school bus driver. We had a very emotional and productive bargaining session on October 10th, where we covered safety and compensation, which kind of dovetails quite nicely with what the licensed staff have been talking about today. Something that our union rep said during that bargaining session has been bouncing around in my head a lot, which is no one does this work for love of money. We do it for the love of the students. And toward that end, we had some proposals concerning safety and compensation that we feel are essential towards our bargaining platform that we presented to the district on the 10th. And we have not heard back from them yet, but I wanted to share some of those items with you. And also I have written notes because I'm going to be quoting from some statements provided to us by some of the classified staff working here in the district. So to start with on safety, equipment, training, and staffing levels are all essential to safety. And I want to share with you a quote from a statement provided by Margaret, who's on our bargaining team and also currently works as a special education assistant, which is also known as an SEA. She talked about a significant staff injury that rendered a friend of hers unable to work, and that person is still off work. And then she concluded with this, and I quote, "The reason I am here on the bargaining team is because when we were not getting safe resolution from the district, the union stepped in and literally saved us. Unfortunately, not soon enough to keep my dear friend from her injuries. Not only did this incident affect staff, but also traumatized the students who witnessed this incident. We love our students, and we know that many of them do not have emotional self-regulation skills. However, this does not negate the need for a safer work environment for staff and students alike. We find that we are managing more behaviors and providing less support for students who are in need of an adult in their inclusion classes. These students are being left behind. I know the answers to these challenges are as complex as the students we serve, but I am here to advocate for myself, my friends, and my coworkers who have been injured, and for students of all abilities. We need to have enough staff to meet the needs of every student. The students with challenging behaviors would benefit from a program that is best suited for their needs with staff who are able to support those behaviors. We SEA should feel safe and supported. The problem is larger than the student, larger than the classroom, and larger than the staff, larger than the school itself. And the only people who can really make this change are you, the district. To that, I would add also, we recognize that the legislature also could really give us a hand by giving us some more funding. Turning to compensation, we had a statement from a classified employee, and I quote, last Friday, payday, I had to help a coworker find a food pantry because she had none, and her whole paycheck had to go to rent. Her husband is disabled, so she is the only income. And I'd like to also share with you an excerpt from a statement by a classified employee that we presented during bargaining, who has worked, so he worked 22 years at his current school, 9 years at Eastwood, prior to that, 4 years at Bosco and David Hill, which were previous schools in the district. He provided a written statement to us, which included these statements. I recently found a contract sheet from 2004. It showed my pay level was $17.51 per hour. And then I'm jumping down. I now make $12.48 more than I did 20 years ago. He had a lot more to say about the nature of his work, but just focusing on the compensation, it's sort of emotional for us because we do not want to resign over low pay. We love our jobs. We love our work. We're highly skilled. We are dedicated to these jobs. We want to be there for the students, and we're good at our jobs, but we're just not being given what we need. Yes, employees can and do take second jobs in the summer if they are 10 months employees, but what we don't want is for people to be in the hole and in debt trying to make up for the fact that they've worked for the school district during the year. So now they're in debt and they're trying to make that up with some other job during the summer or even after school at another job during the school year. On a more positive note, we are making great progress in the bargaining on some working condition items. There have been some procedural changes that will make the contract easier for the classified staff to understand, that will make it easier for administration to administer the contract. There have been a lot of collaborative efforts on behalf of the district bargaining team, and we do feel we're making progress. At the same time, we are really energized to try to make this to meet these challenges of making this a preferred workplace, and that includes, sorry, I'm losing myself a bit here. I should go back to my notes. We are energized as a union to collaborate with the district to make this a preferred workplace, and we are also energized to advocate to the legislature for more funding, because we recognize, it's going to take more funding to do all the things that we need, and that includes what the licensed staff were talking about smaller class size. Their platform dovetails quite nicely with ours, and we will do everything we can, and we have been doing everything we can to meet the needs of the students in this district, but some of us feel a little bit over a barrel at this point. Thank you.
This brings us to discussion time, and we will start off with our student representatives. Hey, would you like to go first?
It was a very great meeting, and hearing all the voices is something that I think is very important. Even though I'm a student rep, I don't have control of things. I definitely see more of a picture, and there's never one thing that I can see from just a work session. There's never one thing I can see from being in person all the time, but what really makes it special is having a spot where I can have both opportunities. Thank you.
Cal?
I just wanted to say that I'm glad to hear from HSD's public speakers tonight, as points were brought up that, as a student, had never crossed my mind. So thank you all very much for your time today.
Thank you. Superintendent Raymond?
Thank you. I wanted to thank folks for coming out tonight too and engaging in a public process. I am grateful for folks on both of the bargaining teams, HEA, HCU, the folks from our board and staff who are on the bargaining teams and in the process of hopefully reaching resolution in a way that's transparent and is better for our school community. So thank you for your passion around education, and I can tell by the comments tonight that you all care deeply about kids and about our community. So thank you for being here. It was on October 15th, the last day of Hispanic Heritage Month, and I wanted to thank Francesca and her team for hosting an event at South Meadows related to Hispanic Heritage Month. There was a wall of history, there were crafts and art activities, as well as Unidos en Ritmo, the group from Hillsboro High School, and Ballet Folklorico from Glencoe High School who performed, and that was a really special event for our community, so thank you, Francesca. Today I was able to go to Glencoe High School and meet with officials from Union Pacific Railroad and Portland Community College who have put together a mobile welding lab. And the cab of this truck was purchased with Future Ready Oregon dollars, and the trailer on the truck was purchased by Union Pacific Railroad and outfitted with welding stalls so that a teacher from PCC can go around from high school to teach students about welding and manufacturing. The teacher's name is Todd Barnett, and he's an instructor from the Swan Island Training Facility for Portland Community College, and I got to talk to Mr. Burnett, and he was excited to have started his journey at Liberty High School, and he's been as far as the Warm Springs Reservation in Central Oregon. Now he's back at Glencoe High School. He's reached 450 high school students to teach them about welding, and he told me two things that really moved me. One was he thinks that bringing manufacturing back to the United States is the way to save our country, and he knows that his efforts every day are going to help students get involved in a trade that's meaningful to him and his life, and he's hoping to create those opportunities as his act of patriotism. And he also told me that he's been really surprised at how respectful and engaged high school students are, and he mentioned actually Liberty High School without me talking to him, and then the students at Glencoe, how our high school students get a bad rap, and that when they engage with him and learn how to weld, that he's just been really impressed by the yes sir attitude that our kids bring to the welding lab. And I thought that was a really encouraging thing for me to hear from him. Last Thursday, I was able to go with board members to the Northwest Regional ESD to engage in a meeting that was facilitated by OSBA around legislative priorities. And it was really impressive to me to see our region come together in Northwest Oregon around the topic of us advocating shoulder to shoulder for adequate funding for education. Administrators, board members, community leaders, legislators, teachers, classified staff, students, industry partners. I see nurses in the back of the room today. I see us all getting together this winter to advocate for stable and adequate funding for schools. I don't see anybody here saying we can't serve the students who come to our schools, but I see us all agreeing on the fact that we need the staffing and the skills in order to do so. And so I'm really excited about the work that Erica and Yvette and Mark and Beth have done together to set our priorities for the legislative session. And we shared the recipe cards with folks at the ESD. And I wanted to thank Nancy for her involvement with OSBA, because it was obvious having you there at the meeting that you're a leader in that work. And I look forward to getting together and finding common ground this winter in order to advocate for public education. Thank you for your leadership, board members.
Thank you. Now we'll move to board members, and we'll start off with Director Ward, who's joining us online.
Good evening, everyone. Real quickly, I'd like to thank all the presenters this evening for the presentations that they have given and the details therein, especially to our community members who came out to speak concerning the survey with the calendar, and for all of our HEA members out in the audience this evening, and hearing from teachers and their concerns in with the classroom. I also look forward to reviewing that data about class size. Thank you, Brian, for being willing to put that together. And I also wanted to bring up from last session, we had a community member that gifted each of us a book by Dr. Miriam Grossman. And I'm not sure if anyone else has had the opportunity to read that book, but I would strongly encourage you to take the time, carve out some time to read that. It was well sourced, lots of data to dig through, and it was well done. Elections coming up, please vote. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Ward. Director Lopez?
Yeah, similar to what Travis mentioned, that we met with other districts from across our region to talk about our legislative priorities. And obviously, this is a conversation that has been happening in Oregon for a long time, and even larger than our state. The way we fund education or the way we prioritize that is just such a big issue for us as a country. And I think that more locally here, we have an opportunity this legislative session, that's a long session, to do some real advocacy and I'm really excited for the passion that's in this room and that we can take that to Salem when the session starts. That's really something that I am looking forward. This is my 7th year on the board, and it has not been enjoyable every year to have to deal with this problem. It sucks. And honestly, like, there's nothing that anybody said that we don't agree with. Like, everything that you said, of course, we all want the same things. The challenging part, as Beth alluded, for the last 20 years, how much we've been cutting in our district and how much that like hurts us and our students, and the reality of the decisions, our board members as well. We're not paid volunteers. We do this because we really care about our community. We're giving our Tuesdays and other days to serve, and it's just comes to a time where it's really hard. And you have new legislators. We have the majority of legislators are new, and none of them know about how funding works for education. And part of the hurdle is we have to educate them about how funding works, and the other part is specifically how it impacts our district. So advocacy is huge. It's a huge component of the work that we do. We don't have a paid lobbyist in Hillsboro because we try to use our money the most that we can in the spaces that matter. So this is our lobbying body right here, and you. So it's really important for us to be a united front next year with our legislators, and to really educate them about what's happening in our classrooms. And all these stories are so heartbreaking and hard, but that's the stuff that we need to tell them so that they hear of what's really happening. And it's not just our district. We know that other districts are hurting just as bad. Our district doesn't have a levy. I mean, other districts around us have passed a levy in their communities, and we just haven't been able to do that here in Hillsboro. So we are even more in more distress. And like I said, nothing that that everybody has said. You won't have that here, that anybody is an adversary to those goals. It's just the way, how do we make that work with also having the responsibilities that we do? As you saw presentations today about, all the things that it takes to run the district. So I hope that that everybody in our board, everybody in administration, we all agree with everything that is said. And we are very willing and able to take this fight to Salem, and we are looking forward to doing that. And part of it was locking arms with our other school districts from around our region and talking about their issues as well and how they're being impacted. I also just wanted to say thank you for everybody for sticking around and getting a glimpse into all the work that goes into having a public session like this. And I'm always just super grateful of our community, because even when we have disagreements or when we have things that are really bothering us, there's always been this level of respect in our community and also of listening. And so I'm just really appreciative that we get to still be in these spaces and be able to hear each other and have an opportunity to listen. Thank you.
I will say it's very rare that we have an audience this late into the evening. So we really do appreciate being able to look out and see more than just empty seats. Thank you all for coming and sharing your stories and really sharing the reality of what it's like in the classroom. I spent a very short period of time in the classroom as a third grade teacher, and I know very well what difference it makes to have just one more student added to a classroom. And so, as Erica mentioned, we hear you, we hear the realities that you're facing and the struggles that you're facing, and we're with you. I don't think any one person in this room wouldn't be here if we weren't here to champion our students. And so we will continue to champion our students, and we know that it starts by supporting the people who interact with our students on a day-to-day basis, whether that's a teacher, a cafeteria worker, a bus driver. We know that you all are the ones that are in the classrooms every single day and in the schools every single day interacting with our students. And so please know that we are here to support you and we are here to really champion our students. And we know that you're here for that same reason as well. I would encourage you to keep sharing your stories. And as Dr. Lopez has mentioned, and really everyone here this evening has mentioned about this legislative session, our advocacy and us uniting is going to be instrumental in being able to share our stories and being able to make the numbers and the data come to life when we talk to our legislators. And so I hope that you will join us. Please know that we will join you. And we look forward to really painting an accurate picture of what it looks like in the classroom. So thank you all for being here this evening. And I also appreciate just the level of transparency that our district operates under, even with the strategic planning and just everything related to the budget. It's easy. Well, I would say a lot of times it's easy to have that operation happen in a little black box. But the level of transparency that I have seen our district staff operate under in being accountable to not only folks in the building, but also to our community is really impactful and meaningful. So I do appreciate our staff for doing so. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. Dr. Thomas?
Good evening, everyone. I first want to say I deeply appreciate the presence of both HEA and HCU membership today. You have been heard. And I need you to hear me. I'm going to pause and say it again. You have been heard. I was glad to see you applaud for Mary Kay Babcock. She doesn't normally get an applause like that. And I was all jazzed. I'm like, you got to applause. Yes. Honestly, though, as we prepare to participate in activities that are designed to lobby our Oregon legislators, you've heard from my fellow directors that this is not going to be easy. There's like 167 new legislators who know nothing. So, I'm working with OSBA and we're working with, Mark is working for, not yet, we're getting there. But my point is that the one thing this job has taught me, this job I volunteer for that I don't get paid for and I have to leave my day job and get here most of the time, not timely. Thank you, Rose, for trying to make that happen. Is that this is a job about learning what you can't do. And I've never been in that position. And it's very interesting. And so when I see you, and I will say this again, and you'll hear me say it forever as long as I'm on the board, I see my sister. My sister is a high school English teacher in the state of Georgia who does not have people like you representing her, who has to call me and cry with me because of the conditions in her classroom, because she has 10 or more special education students who deserve the time that they have, but because she's got a total of 45 in that classroom, she's got to run down to administrative and say, can I get some help? So when I hear you, when you hear me say, I hear you, I hear you, I keep saying when I win the lottery, I'm going to change it all. But I guess you got to play. The lottery I'm talking about, though, the real one, is when we go to Salem. I want you to understand that I will take the words of one of your members and I want somebody to tell her. She had a poster over in that corner, and I'm going to take it with me. Hashtag staff working conditions are student learning conditions. I'm taking that with me. If I'm stealing it, just want to let you know. Or shall I say I will appropriately borrow. I can return it when I'm done, but it won't have much life. In addition, I also wanted to say that I'm happy to confirm that we're just a couple of weeks away from the OSBA annual conference. Rose, once again, bless you and thank you for putting up with me trying to get on the call. I'm honored to be a guest speaker for one of the sessions. I will also be facilitating several of the sessions for the weekend, so they're putting me to work. It's going to be in Portland on, I think it's the 7th and 8th and 9th, I think. So looking forward to that. And the final thing I want to say to all teachers and all classified staff, I want to give you a heartfelt thank you for your service. None of us are here for a paycheck. Thank you for your service to our students and our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Dr. McGuire?
I learned a great deal from the wisdom of my colleagues, and as well as from the wisdom of those of you who came today and shared and spoke about what you're experiencing. I made a note a few months ago, and I read the transcript of a speech given by the president of the National Education Association to the Assembly or Representative Assembly of Delegates that they hold every year. And speaking of NEA members, of which we have many here today, she said, "We will continue to embrace the profound trust that has been placed in us to serve and support every student, to excite and encourage every student, to inspire the imaginations of every student as we guide them toward their greatness." I wrote that down because it reminded me a little bit of the slogan behind me that Hillsboro School District has as our mission statement: to know, value, and empower every student. So as we've been speaking today, it's very touching to me that all unions advocate for their members, but those of you who are involved in education unions are somewhat unique in that you're also advocating for our students, for their well-being. Because I too was struck by the sign that Nancy mentioned, that the things you're asking for, as I read through them, as I look through them and hear about fair compensation that will encourage all of our educators and support staff to stay in the profession, as you ask for safe learning environments, as you ask for personalized attention for students. Those are things that all of our community wants for our schools. And so I just thank you for your advocacy and ask you to please continue. And we on the board are going to do our best. We're volunteers, so we're not in the schools as much as you are. This is your profession, your life work. But we are determined to support you in every way we can. So thank you again for being here, truly.
Thank you, Dr. McGuire. Dr. Watson?
Thank you. Maybe that's part of what draws us to the work. My sister's a special education teacher, so we have that in common, Nancy. Thank you, everybody, for being here, filling the room tonight. Appreciate that. As it's already been said, love to look out and see some faces. Everybody staying late and coming in late on a school night, so we all appreciate that. And thank you, Monique, for staying up past 12:30 in your time zone. I appreciate your dedication to the board work. Travis mentioned the welding truck, and it just sparked a thing. So I would like to put on, like, in our to-do list, one of the great things the board gets to do is visit programs in our district from time to time. One of my favorites was the construction program at Glencoe. So I'd love to figure out, like, if we could have another board field trip to the construction program at Glencoe. It's pretty awesome, and it was literally one of my favorites. So I'd like to put that on the list of things maybe to
field trip.
Yeah, I love board field trips are pretty great. Well, probably all field trips are pretty great, but all right. To the parents who came and the parents listening and have been emailing us about the decisions regarding the calendar, I want to assure you no decision has been made on that front. It is a work in progress. We have a committee of people, parents, administrators, teachers, a wide swath of people working together to analyze the situation here in Hillsboro and uniqueness of our situation in Hillsboro. I think the administrative team is fairly convinced that starting before Labor Day would create better outcomes for students. I don't know that our community is convinced that that's what their students want or their families need. No decision has been made. Please, and I appreciate you making your voice heard. I don't love the wording of the survey either, but say that for another time. But yeah, just realize no decision has been made on this front. There are more calendar committee meetings yet to come. If you know people on that committee, please reach out to them as well, or just keep reaching out to the district and the board regarding this topic so that we can make sure that your voices are being heard. If it's not what is best for the Hillsboro students, then we probably would end up where we were last year. So, but I can tell you that our administrative team is very convinced that it is going to create better outcomes for our students if we did it. So take it for what it's worth. I also attended the legislative agenda session on Thursday, with some other board colleagues, and it was great to see the work coming together to advocate with the legislature. I think enough of us have spoke about that you understand where we're at. Michelle's always great in all of her presentations for the board and in bargaining to point out that 83% of our budget is spent on people. That's the kind of business we're in. If the state allocated us more funding, I don't think that ratio would change. 82 or 83% of that more funding would be spent on people. So it's our job to all together work with the legislature so that more funding is allocated. We have lots of graphs, lots of charts, lots of numbers to indicate the declining way education's been funded in Oregon for a long time. I am an advocate, I think many of you know, for the systemic change. The fundamental way we fund education in Oregon, I think, is flawed, has been since Measure 5 and 50, 30 years ago. Only took me 7 years with Eric on the board to understand, well, maybe I understand a little bit sooner, but yeah, 4 or 5 years on the board to finally understand that. I also think we need to temper our expectations because that is not the kind of fundamental shift you can accomplish in a single session. I've been fortunate enough to work in the legislature a couple different times, and I know that oftentimes the bills that pass have the seeds planted in one session, don't come to fruition that session. So I think we do need to keep talking about it. We do need to plant the seeds that the sort of fundamental way we do things is not providing the outcomes that we would hope for statewide. It's not just us, not just Hillsboro. And I've said this many times before, but maybe we have a different audience tonight. So I think it's worth saying again. I think 2008 financial crisis, we started talking about current service level pretty heavily. And it really is the description of the words. I've been saying for 5 or 6 years that the way we calculate current service level has been flawed. It has never been an accurate calculation for Hillsboro whenever the governor's office comes out with a number or whenever the legislative fiscal office comes out with a number. So I appreciate the governor's efforts to correct the way we calculate current service level. I think it would be great to know how much it would cost to at least continue to do the things we're doing today. But I think we also need to recognize that in 2008, 2007, that scarcity mentality maybe made sense. The economy was in collapse. Every department had to cut budget. Current service level is doing the bare minimum. I think we need to get it right, of course, but I would like to see us in times of economic growth, which is what we've been in for the last 8 years at least. We should not be talking about how we do the bare minimum. We should talk about how we invest in our kids. So hopefully that will be one of the other messages we hear at this legislative session, but also maybe planting the seed now so that sometime in the future we can at least stop with the scarcity mentality in times of economic growth and talk about how we make investments. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you, Director Watson. I wanted to thank you all for coming out and, sharing your stories and experiences. And that's something I can fundamentally relate with you. I have my own preschool as a day job, and my teachers are very important to me. In order for them to, educate and have our students thrive, they have to have the tools, the support, and the pay to continue that work. And so I just wanted to say that I stand with you and everything that you guys do and all the work that you do for our students here at HSD. And I want to thank Beth and our team for educating me every single day when it comes to legislative work and funding. And I cannot wait to be in Salem this coming year with all of you and standing and advocating for funding and accurate funding for our public schools. I also want to thank our board members for all the work that you do here and outside, and Nancy for being on the OSBA and representing not just Hillsboro but Washington County in our area. And I also wanted to say I got to go to the South Meadows event, which for Hispanic Heritage Month, and it was a beautiful thing. And our students were there, and I saw some of my students from my school, which was so cute and fun. And they always think it's a little weird to see me outside of, this classroom. That's always fun to do. And I just wanted to say thank you for being with us tonight. And I know it's been a very long day for all of you. And you guys have, tomorrow to go back to those classrooms. And I just wanted to say thank you. And with that, this meeting is adjourned at 9:40.